Sorry, and I'm good here with the.
In my best Billy Crystal voice, you look mom.
I do, don't I? Okay, good morning. Everyone's here. I'd like to call this meeting the General Finance Committee meeting to order September 16th, Wednesday, 2020 at 9:02. Cheryl? 9:02? Thank you. I'll state here now the electronic meeting is being held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All members of this committee and the mayor are present, and I would confirm quorum. There were no members absent. The CAO here, Derek Hammett is here, Cheryl Mortimer is here, our clerk, and Cheryl Hollos is here in the room. There was no public input on this agenda. It was invited at the email address tmlpubliccomment@muskokalakes.ca. There was none received. And there's a note here, the motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders. To expedite the meeting and the voting, members shall physically raise their hand until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk. This is not considered a recorded vote. There is no supplementary agenda for today's meeting. And my first piece of business is are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest from any committee member? No, seeing none. Thank you. At this time, then I'll call on our one and only delegation. There was a second delegation which has now declined. So I'm going to call on Michael Murton of Bala, re the District Highway 169 Speed Limit Reduction request. So Michael Murton, if you're there.
Yeah.
Are you on mute, Michael?
He needs to unmute.
You need to unmute, Michael.
Can you hear me better now?
We can hear you. We can see you. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well,
the reason why I'm here today, you have received a proposal that I put together to talking about specifically the speed of traffic south of the town of Bala, and in comparison to the way things operate on the north side of Bala and also on 38, we have a disparity between the speeds. And if just to summarize what the issue is, if you travel north from what was the old Bala outpost, which is now Wally's food truck, the traffic speed changes from first 80 to 60, and then 60 right through up until really the beer store just at the south end of Bala. As a consequence, unfortunately, people driving into Bala from the south typically don't slow down until they get up to about the beer store. And so we have speeds that are in excess of the 60 posted limit. And in fact, they're more in the 80 to 100 kilometer limit. This creates problems for basically people who are in their residences trying to either enter the residences from the street because of cars coming up, speeding up behind them, or crossing over in front of them. It also is a problem for anyone. We tend to walk to town most days, and you're buffeted by trucks and cars when they're traveling 100 kilometers per hour and they are 6 feet away from you. It is a significant problem. Comparatively, if you look at the north end of town, there are no residences, and the speed limit changes from 80 to 50 directly by the Moon River Road. On 38, there are 68 residences that are affected by the drop in speed, which goes again from 80 directly to 50. The difference in terms of the south end is there are 91 direct residences. I know that's the case because I walked the street in order to count them. And that's not including the 29 that are accessing 169 from Windsor Drive. So there's 130 residences. average size between 120 and 150 feet wide, these frontages. This goal, the goal of this is not to, it's just basically to make the traffic itself safer. It's not to change things beyond that. It's really just to make people have a better chance to get into their driveway, to get out of their driveway, to walk safely, to bicycle safely south of town. I spoke to Sergeant Mike McDonald in Bracebridge about what was happening with speed throughout Muskoka. And in particular, I was asking him, what about compliance in the Bala area? And he said, the problem really is that they have 8 officers that deal with all issues, all the way over to Georgian Bay and all the way south to Severn Bridge. So they're really having to deal predominantly with answering calls. But he also indicated that while they don't do speed checks, they obviously monitor speed when they're traveling to and fro. And he indicated to me that he has written 5 times the number of tickets this year that he has at any other year in the last 5 years. It's not a seasonal problem, and particularly because of COVID, it's really not going to be seasonal. When you consider that any house that's being renovated or built from this point forward, they all have to be winterized. So people are going to be able to use them and are using them more than they have been in the past. I sent this morning an addendum to the proposal that basically is an analysis of the speed changes and in this area. If you consider those lot sizes of 100 to 150 feet, the timeline associated with people who are speeding and the reaction time of the residents who live there means that basically, if you are driving at the speed limit of 50 in a 120-foot lot, that basically the time to travel across that front of that lot is 2.2 seconds. It's not a lot of time. At 60, it's 1.8 seconds. And clearly at 80 kilometers, if they don't slow down south of Bala, it drops it to 1.4 seconds. When I guess what I'm really getting at, I have had no problem whatsoever getting people to sign a petition associated with this, and I have run into the only thing that I've heard from people about this as far as what the concerns are with doing it are, will it actually affect a change in speed? And I go for traffic calming every time that we can turn around in this area at this point. I don't expect people are going to drop directly to 50 because that's just not human nature these days. But if they drop it, instead of driving 80 to 100 kilometers into the town of Bala, if they drop it to between 50 and 65, you know what? That'll make a massive difference to the way people can live and operate in this area. And so that's a big part of the reason why I'm asking council to recommend to the District of Muskoka that the speed be dropped at the south end from 80 directly to 50, and do it. I mean, obviously, I realize that that's the it's up to the District of Muskoka to approve that or whatnot, but I think there's a very strong case for making this change to improve it. And that's really what I have to say. Do you have any questions for me?
Good, thank you, Michael. Very well done. I know that there will be some discussion. I know that I will be calling on Ken Becking, our Director of Public Works, for comment, perhaps after some of the committee folks, if they do have questions or thoughts, may ask them of you. So I would now ask the committee, do you have questions or thoughts on Michael's presentation? I see Councillor Hayes has her hand up. Councillor Hayes? You need to unmute.
Her headset's not working, Canelda. Your headset's not working.
There you go.
I went through there yesterday
Good.
and everybody was doing the speed limit. And for those that aren't aware, there's construction. So there was a stop sign. So that's the reason. Normally, I would have to agree with Michael. They do go through at speeds in excess of 80 in that area. The only thing I would change about the request is the 60 right now happens after Wally's driveway. I would like to see it moved up to happen just before Wally's driveway and the landing. So I would move both the 80, going back to 80 after the landing, and the down to 50 just before Wally's driveway. It is dangerous there. I've driven it many times, and I've watched as cars come up behind me and squeal on their tires, and I'm trying to do 60 and they're trying to do 100. So it is a dangerous zone. There is lots of traffic there. It is in town technically. And I think that this is a good safety measure. And last month, if you'll recall, we had a request to put in a flashing sign at the beer store to slow people down. Perhaps this will help with that as well.
Good, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I'm disappointed to learn, and I think we should confirm that the OPP have implied in so many words that they are not staffed to do traffic control because they're so busy doing everything else. So this appears that I think council should approach the OPP and say we need more traffic enforcement in the areas of Bala, Port Carling, areas in our two villages, because if it's that bad, then this should have been jumped on right away by the OPP. So I would wait for Director Becking to speak, but I would hope that we should first ask for a traffic study on this, and not delay it too long, but usually we do traffic studies on areas of concern. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. I wonder if Mr. Murton, if you could reflect on your earlier commentary in your presentation as it related to what the OPP had to say. I mean, you had an extensive conversation as you apprised me of that situation. Can you share more in terms of that?
Yeah, Sergeant McDonald basically indicated they are doing traffic stops. It's just they can't commit resources that they don't have. They don't have, even if they were to, for example, put a cruiser in a driveway as a visible sign that maybe people should slow down. They don't even have the extra cruiser to do that. And they certainly, with 8 staff to run this whole area, they can only deal with things as basically as they are responding to calls. Having said that, as I said, he indicated that he's written 5 times the number of tickets this year than he's ever done. So they are clearly doing traffic stops. It's just that, without that visible presence of a speed check, we're not going to see much difference. But the other aspect is, if we assume that we can't make this better because we don't have enforcement, I think that's a mistake, because basically, if we drop the speed limit, there's a big difference. If someone is driving along and the speed limit changes from 80 to 50 and they're going 100, they will slow down. They won't perhaps slow down to the 50, but if they're going 60 instead of 100, that's a massive improvement to the way people can live along this road.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Before I speak, have Ken Becking come on. Is there anyone else? Now, Phil, I know you and I have had some discussions on this, not trying to draw you into it. You certainly have excellent view from the district, being on the Engineering Public Works chair. So I would give you this opportunity. If you don't want it, that's fine. If we just want to let the gel.
Oh, happy to chime in. Thanks. And thanks, Michael, for the concern. I guess through you, Chair Zavitz, the issue we face around, and I've sat with these analysis on many roads and everybody wants lower speed limits. You started your presentation that people aren't doing 60, they're doing 80. The road and the geometry of the road and the sight lines generally allow for a higher speed. And that is the fundamental problem. So just putting a lower speed limit on it is not necessarily going to make people go a slower speed. As Donalda commented, she's doing 60 and the guy almost ran in the back of her. Now she's going to be doing 50. The guy's definitely going to run into the back of her, potentially, because there are some people who do that. It was about 8 years ago now, and I think Councillor Hayes and Councillor Nishikawa would probably remember, maybe Councillor Edwards, we actually discussed this very section of road, and we talked about pushing the 50 zone all the way out of town, and recommended against it at the time. And that's where we went to the 60 zone. Number one, the district doesn't really like to go from an 80 to a 50. It's too big a jump to drop down that quickly. So that's where the 60 came in. And I appreciate it is the reverse on the other side, probably more some legacy information, but they prefer not to do those steps if possible. Notwithstanding, they can be done, but I'd love to pull the old data. And again, driving patterns have changed and everything else. The district can do an analysis. They will have official data, not just an individual officer's comment, how many tickets are in this area. We typically set speeds on a road to what's known as the 85th percentile. And I'll use this analogy. If you're driving down Highway 400 or Highway 11 and there's no cars on the road and you're in a construction zone, you're probably not going to be doing the 50. You're probably going to pushing it and going a little bit higher because there's no cars on the road. Now, when you see people and when you see an OPP cruiser, you certainly do 50. So I agree with you on that. And maybe there needs to be some increased enforcement. And that can also come through the OPP, and this council can request that as well in the area. But I think it is appropriate for the district for us to undertake a speed limit analysis and provide what I'll call the district recommendations. But when you have a road that's built for 80 kilometers an hour, and it used to be 80 more into town, we brought it out to 60, you potentially cause some significant issues. And you go down to 50 and that person's doing 90, he's now lost his car. So that may slow people down to the 80, but let's get people down to the 60 and I think all the problem goes away. So, I guess I'd recommend we do an analysis as to what's going on in there and see where we want to chime in or not. Because when you've got a long straight road, people are probably not going to do 50. The sight lines, yes, I pass a driveway in 1.6 seconds, but if I can see 10 driveways ahead, it's not as much of an issue. So I'll leave it at that and happy to circle back with the district to do a full analysis on the highway.
Good, thank you. So Councillor Nishikawa has a comment. Ruth?
Thank you. I'm not disagreeing with the mayor, but I will say that we did not do a study to this area. We did a study to go out to the train tracks in Torrance, and that's where everything got off the rail. This area is incredibly busy. The difference is that basic Callahan's Creek is where sewer and water stops. That's the only difference. We still have jam-packed driveways. Where the changeover is where the outpost is located. I would suggest that it's only about, I don't even know if it's 100 feet between the 60 zone sign that's already there further into Bala, then all of a sudden the jump to the 80. If we were only asking for 60 to that location, I don't think that there would be a problem. And I certainly don't think that there needs to be studies. We know the challenges on that highway, nothing new. Certainly people are commenting to the director at the district right now because of the construction that's happening and other businesses that asked if we could delay this because of things. So it's all moving forward, but if we were to only ask for the 60, I think it's an easy peasy thing to get passed. And I believe that once we just take a vote, it'll go off to district. I don't think there needs to be a road. I mean, we all know the hills and turns and everything else. It's not a straightaway at all. There is a section that's a straightaway, but certainly there's other areas that are very challenged. So I would suggest that I think 50 may be a challenge to do there, but if we could get it at least posted to 60, but I really do believe that once this committee votes on it and goes to district, that it'll be looked at more closely.
Good, thank you. Councillor Hayes?
Through you. I'm going to agree with Councillor Nishikawa. It was the moving of the 60 back to Torrance that we looked at back 4 years ago. And the section that is 60 only takes about 10 or 15 seconds to drive through. So moving that 60 area to 50 isn't going to make much of a difference time-wise. It's getting to people to slow down and getting those people that have their driveways there, being able to go into their homes and come out of their homes without being run over. And I don't think we really need a traffic study. I think we can request this of the district, and if they feel a traffic study is necessary, then they will go and do it.
Good, thank you. I don't see any more hands up. Would I, at this point in time, then call on Director Public Works Becking for his comments? Ken?
Mute.
Muted.
Ken, you're muted.
Okay.
There you go. There he is.
Okay.
Okay, you're good.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As has been noted, this is a district road, so it's the district's responsibility to regulate speed limits within on the roadway. Generally speaking, speed limits should be set consistent with the nature of the surrounding environment. And to put a 50 zone as an example in a rural setting is not going to achieve anything other than non-compliance, because the traffic simply won't obey it. 50 kilometers an hour zones are the purview of urban environments where the degree of development and the proximity of the adjoining environment closes in on the roadway. Things are tighter, and that has the natural effect of slowing the traffic down. Transition areas from rural areas in inverted commas to urban areas are always a challenge, because the traffic, ultimately in rural areas, the purpose of the road is to move traffic. It's not pedestrians, it's not access to property, it's to move traffic. That's what the road is there for. If you're going to request a change, the change should be consistent with the nature of the surrounding environment, and there should be some kind of a reasonable length transition zone from the 80 down to the 60. That typically occurs coincident with the defined urban boundary of the area. So I would suggest that if you're going to make a request of the district, that it should be along those lines.
Thank you. Just a second thought, Ken, if I might. So when you approach Bala from Torrance, I think the subject area we're talking about is directly related to the signage. It says, Township of Muskoka Lakes, Bala, going into Bala from Torrance, which is where the 50-kilometer rather starts when you're coming into Bala from Port Carling. I'm confused by that. I'm very confused by the idea, the notion that for some reason, it's okay to go 80 into Bala from Torrance, but it's not okay to do it from Port Carling. So I don't understand, maybe there doesn't need to be an alignment of the other two ingress pieces, that being Highway 38 and 169 into Bala from Port Carling, but and I don't want to go against your words. I mean, your commentary is obviously based on fact and experience. I probably would want to go back to committee here now and ask, I don't know, a nodding of heads, or what does the committee think? I need to take your temperature in terms of what do we move forward with this? Or do we just accept the report from a constituent with a petition from many others and take it under advisement and look at it at a later date? My preference would be to do some sort of a staff report to council next month. The challenge with that is we've just heard from the Director of Public Works that I see no reason why you would, change your sort of impression, if you will. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge. So I might just throw that out there. I'll let the mayor comment.
All right, thank you. And again, when I recommended a study, we're not going to do a study Township of Muskoka Lakes. The District of Muskoka would not be just saying, okay, we're going to change the road and we're going to change the speed limit. They will be doing what's known as a TAC analysis. They understand sight lines. They understand number of vehicles that go down the road. They understand the average speed, the 85th percentile. There's always going to be extremes on either side, but they really understand from a sight line perspective. And again, yes, there's turns in the road, but if it's a mild turn and I can see 400 feet down the road, it warrants a certain speed. That's all government dictated across the province. We can make a request to have it lowered. It ultimately will be the response of the district as to whether or not they do that or not, but it will come with a full speed analysis of the road to be able to advise us and or my committee at the district, do we want to do this or not? Understand the district's mandate is to move people between municipalities. And if I'm moving people from Gravenhurst into Bala and from Bala into Port Carling, that traffic flow is key. If we were to say all the way from Gravenhurst to Port Carling on Highway 169 as a 50-kilometer zone, either we're going to send out a lot of tickets for those people who travel it, or people aren't just going to drive the road. So there's that, I'll use the word balance between the two, but that's where the analysis is going to come. There's no question. Can we do something? Can we move the 50-kilometer zone out? Absolutely. That's a possibility. Maybe we can move the 60-kilometer zone out, but that analysis will come through the district engineering and public works department, and they will advise us how many cars. They will get a police report, how many accidents are in the area and what's going on, so that an educated decision can be made. It's that simple. And we can simply request the district to evaluate the 50, 60, 80-kilometer zone on Highway 169 coming from Torrance into Bala.
Good, thank you. Councilor Nishikawa?
Thank you. I believe that we should be requesting either, I do believe that there should be a resolution that goes to district for sure. And I believe that we can either do it at this meeting. There isn't anything that we require to do from a report perspective. But we could either at this meeting or at council request that a speed limit reduction be put in place, and I'm going to suggest that 60 is more likely to get passed, because in fact, there's lots of example of that. So if I would suggest that we ask for it to be 60, 50 is very, very restrictive. Too many, no, we're not going to do that kind of thing, but 60 is acceptable. And if I even look at the entrance into Gravenhurst, which is 60, right? So,
Right, it is.
but I don't know if there's a resolution that's already been drafted, but I do believe that is the way. I don't think that we should just be hoping that district's going to do this without a resolution.
Good, thank you. Any other comments? I saw Councillor Bridgman had your hand up. No?
Councillor Edwards has his hand up.
Okay, so I can't see that. Councillor Edwards?
Thank you very much. And that through the chair, I agree with Mayor Harding. We should ask for a traffic study in that. Just dropping it down to 50. I know Windermere right from the D-Bank Road is 50 and nobody does it simply for the fact that it's just too slow. And that if you look at some of the major cities in the States, it's 40 to 45 miles an hour along those streets. So it's I think something we should just ask for a study. I would support that. I think 50 at this point is too low. Maybe if they move 60 out a little bit, put the flashing warning lights in that seem to be working on Peninsula Road and I would support asking for a study.
Good, thank you. Is that a general consensus? And I can't see you all. It would seem to me that the study idea makes certain sense, and we would need to recommend to council for next month that council request that of the district, that being a traffic study regarding a speed adjustment, whatever that ends up being, whether it's 50, 60, and the location as to where it starts, begins, whatever. Do I have a general consensus? So I see the mayor, sorry.
So I think if it be appropriate that we should pass a resolution, I can craft one quickly in this committee that will be endorsed by council, that the Township of Muskoka Lakes requests consideration to extend the 60 zone south on Highway 169 towards Torrance, and that the district evaluate additional options, including extending the 50 zone southbound out of Bala as well. I think that may encapsulate it and would get us to a finish line. And I think, and we need that resolution from this council for the district to act.
Right, I guess the question is whether we do it today or at council next month.
Well, we would have to suspend rules of order and everything because it's not.
All right, okay,
Receive it.
Oh,
So do it for
okay.
council. We'll have a resolution
okay.
for council.
So we'll have a resolution, if this works for everyone. Well, the plan would be that we would have a resolution to council. Essentially what the mayor has said, he framed it up well, for next month at our council meeting for consideration and perhaps, move on to the district for that. That seems to be the consensus. Okay.
Sorry, if I may, Chair Zavitz, to, I guess, almost the clerk, can we not, with 2/3, put a motion on the floor today that just simplifies things for paperwork to that effect, that this committee recommends to council, as opposed to just bringing it straight on to council as an idea, then it follows through our traditional plan. There's an item on the agenda today that talks about speed limit, and then we could issue a resolution following that.
I would look to the clerk and the CAO.
Yeah, can you turn that? I'm going to speak. Hi, good morning. There is no resolution prepared for this matter. We were just to receive the delegation's request, and we would have to suspend rules of order. We have no motion prepared, so we would need some time to prepare all of that. I think the easiest way would be just to direct committee to direct staff to have it ready for on the council agenda when we enact. This would be an action item on the consent agenda for next council. Then we can properly word the language. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, so, I mean, as chair, do I have a show of nodding of heads or whatever as to what people would prefer to do? I think it probably, to our clerk's perspective, it's orderly, it makes sense. It brings it forward next month to council. That seems to be what I'm sensing from the group. Okay, so maybe, okay, good. So I'm seeing some heads. Okay, good. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Murton. Appreciate you bringing it forward, and we'll be wanting to watch the agenda for next month at council. And we'll keep this matter moving. Thank you. Okay, good. I'm gonna, sorry? All good? Good, thank you. So item 5A, we have a report from Director of Public Works Ken Becking on the Bala Portage Street dock. Items 5A and 5B are somewhat related. So Ken, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council will, or committee rather, will recall that staff have brought forward reports on this matter earlier in the year. We've had two unsuccessful attempts to tender the replacement of the dock. The dock is in poor condition and requires replacement. Of that, there is no doubt. Further to the direction of council, the Heritage Committee was consulted, and they have no concerns with the replacement or removal of the dock. The foundations of the existing dock are in poor condition, and so staff's original recommendation remains that if we're going to replace the dock, the cribs have to be replaced with new cribs or some form of piled foundation. At this point, your options are either to replace the current dock in the same configuration and at the same location as the current dock, or in the alternative, remove it, including the cribs, at least down to a course or two above the river bottom, so as to remove them as a potential hazard for navigation. It should be noted that the current Portage dock is provides a parallel service to the River Street dock. So there will continue to be a place for docking to occur. We have had some input from the public indicating that they prefer the Portage dock because it's closer to downtown. The main objection to the River Street dock is that it's a further walk into the village. Nonetheless, the River Street dock does provide a parallel service. If you were to elect to not replace the Portage Street dock, you can likely expect that you're going to be requested to extend or increase the size of the River Street dock in order to provide more capacity for boats. With that, Mr. Chairman, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Good, thank you. Committee, any thoughts on that? We've batted this around a number of times. I have a resolution here in front of me. If there are no comments to the alternative, sorry. Oh, sorry, Councilor Ishikawa has her hand up. Thank you.
I'm a little bit confused or even disappointed that I had thought that we were going to be looking at doing a strategic plan for Bala, and that this conversation would be included in the overall meetings with the public, that we were looking at not just one-offs, because Bala needs a lot of money. There needs to be a lot of sort of redirection of old uses. Certainly the Portage dock has had a reduced flow of people using it. And it's been interesting, the conversations that I've had with people, same sort of thing. Oh, it's a little bit further to walk into town. And it was a lot of, I would say, people's opinions changed when they found out how much money it was going to cost to repair this dock. I don't feel comfortable yet that we've ever had that conversation with the public. And I had hoped that, and perhaps Derek, if you're on the call, would be able to highlight a little bit more about what we're doing with that strategic look on the community and the overall budget discussions that we were getting to at one point.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I can confirm with committee that Councillor Nishikawa is right. We do have received funding for a community improvement plan. The staff would need to come back to committee, I believe, with a request to issue a request for proposals. So the process is going to take some time before we actually get into public meetings. I would anticipate that's probably later this year, if not next year. So I guess committee will need to make a decision as to whether or not they want to proceed with the replacement of this dock at this time, or wait for that process.
Thank you. I'll call on Councillor Bridgman. Bert?
Sorry. I just have a question through you, Chair, to Director Becking. What it would be the cost of extending the other dock to replace the number of, let's say 10 more spots on the other one? If we took down one dock and we extended the other one, I'm just curious what the cost factor approximately would be. Let's say 10 more spaces.
Mr. Chairman, off the top of my head, 10 tens are 100, 600. About $40,000 to $50,000 would be an absolute minimum.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I just was curious what that would be.
Yeah, I think just for optics as well, knowing the place, there is a geographical aspect to the placement of the dock at Portage Street. I mean, it's not only closer, but it's also puts you in the middle of the village versus quite a ways away. So, I mean, it is a very central docking center, and it has been for a long, long time. So if we were just to extend the other, dock with floaters or whatever, that may not hit the target. So I just want to contemplate that. Sorry, Ken Becking has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While I was happy to try and give you sort of a back of a cigarette pack kind of an estimate, expanding the existing dock is not simply building the necessary extension. There would have to be a public process. I would have no doubt that the neighbors would not be enamored with the idea of doubling or trebling the size of the existing dock. So it wouldn't be something just as simple as, oh, let's strap on another 60 or 70 feet of dock.
Good, thank you. Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll put my view in. First of all, I would certainly defer to the Ward A councillors that are a lot closer to this, so I would support to what they would like to do. But on principle and being fiscally responsible, it would seem to me that we shouldn't be replacing things if there's no need for it. And what I've heard so far is that it's doubtful that there is a need for it. So I would certainly be in favor of deferring this until it's established that there is a need. However, I did qualify that if the Ward A councillors believe it's important to proceed, I would support them. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I line up with Councillor Jaglowitz. I think that, and what my Councillor Ruth Nishikawa is saying is that we should not rush into this. We need a plan of what we're going to do. It's a dock that's been there for quite a long time. And I think we should need a plan to do something, to figure out what we're going to do for Bala before we do anything. I would suggest that we do, Director Becking was saying that everything has to be replaced anyways. So we should spend the money now to dig out and take out the old dock, because we can't be used. And then once the plan is done, then we can either mothball forever or redevelop something. That's my input on this.
Good, thank you. I'll call on the mayor.
Thank you. So first of all, and I'll look to Mr. Hammond or Mr. Donaldson. Actually, I'm not sure if he has the background, but we did receive some money, I know, and some potential money from the province for damages caused by the flood. And I'm not sure, I know we had some issues on some of the docks and everything else, but I believe that we can earmark some of that money to replace this dock. I would be very concerned for us to remove public parking on a waterway from something that's been established. And I appreciate that Ward B and Ward C councillors probably have not heard this. I know Ward A councillors certainly have, and I certainly have, of everybody, when's our dock coming back? When's our dock coming back? Everybody wanted it. So we sent them away and we said, no, it was too expensive. We needed some other options. And I agree with that. To me, this isn't a community improvement plan because we've removed something from the community already. So do we choose to return it or not? And if the province is going to help us replace this dock, then I am fully supportive of replacing this dock and not complicating it with a fancy plan for overall Bala and everything else. Sorry. We're going to spend that money elsewhere in Bala and improve all of Bala, but adding public parking as close to downtown as possible, put some money back into Bala, which we've drained Bala over the years. So all those people on the Moon River who want to come in and shop may need a place to go. So that's my perspective, and I'm in favor of moving this dock forward. To be honest.
Well said, Mayor. Thank you. And certainly, before I call on Councillors Ishikawa and Edwards, I would ask Mark Donaldson, our financial executive, to have a comment here. I believe he has an insight. Mark?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. We are in talks with officials at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding eligibility of expenses related to the flood. There is a certain amount of evidence that needs to be provided to them to support eligibility for those costs, and it would certainly be something we would have to work with the Department of Public Works as to whether or not that information is available and whether or not that funding could be used for that purpose.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I agree with Mayor Harding. In fact, I believe the docs came before the Heritage Committee and that for approval. I believe at that time, if my memory serves me right, they were going to extend the one wing on that so they can get a few more boats in and that, and to encourage people to come into Bala and shop and everything else like that. I would not take it away. I think we should be looking at it. If with the province is going to pay some of it, I think we should at least go ahead and get it tendered to see what it actually will cost and that, but I would support that. And yes, we have to look at Bala for other things, but if it's in the flood damage, then I would go for it at this point. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councilor Nishikawa, I'll give you that last comment.
More than $500,000 is what we are talking about. This isn't a $40,000 or $50,000 dock. It's, you know, our last numbers were in the range of 500,000. My experience with pretty much anything municipal is that it doesn't come in on budget. So let's give it that much more. The point is, and I guess everyone has received phone calls from all over the place. The phone calls that I've received were people complaining because their kids needed to be able to go to serve ice cream. And the kids didn't want to walk that much further on on River Street. And I would suggest we're talking about, you know, a few hundred steps difference. But most importantly, for 2 years, this dock, and I would say even longer than that, this dock has been not operating. I think we have had the summer to actually understand the effects, if any, from the Bala Falls, the new hydro plant. I don't really myself have data on any of that, but at least that is there and we can understand that. We didn't even know if, for instance, how that would affect this particular dock. Again, my concern is reaching out to the public. And even at the other location on Portage Street, there were other possibilities that could be discussed, but that would be a closed session matter. And I'm just really concerned that we just think that throwing $500,000 around is just easy peasy kind of thing. I would suggest that we really need to reach out to the people in the community and have an understanding of where they want to see money spent. Perhaps this dock will be rebuilt, but I would suggest that, and comments that have been made to me, that putting a steel dock there is not actually replacing that dock. That's a whole different animal. That's a whole different maintenance thing. So I really think that we should be trying to, there seems to be it almost felt a few of the comments made me feel like we don't want to reach out to the public. And that's absolutely not the way that I want to approach this. I think for sure that we should be having some form of discussions, whether it be 12 feet apart. I still think we can find a way to talk to our community.
Good, thank you. Councillor Edwards has your hand up.
Thank you very much. Maybe you could just clarify that, because I'm looking at page 11 and it says 325,000, 375,000. So was this report wrong, or is it the 500,000? Just for clarification, because and how much would the province be putting towards that? Thank you.
Director Becking, I'll direct that to you perhaps.
As council will recall, Mr. Chairman, we did tender out the alternative in the spring. The bids came in at 408,000 for the scheme based on a piled foundation, which is a more expensive proposition than a cribbed foundation. The report indicates the anticipated cost to be somewhere between 325 and 375,000 based on the existing configuration and a cribbed foundation.
Thank you. Just a question on that. Are we talking about a new dock that is high water sensitive? Are we talking about a dock that we would produce or we would build there that would be able to withstand the freshettes for the next 57 years? Is that, I mean, how much have we contemplated that? Maybe through the mayor? Maybe mayor?
No, that has been anticipated in the design, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Okay, thank you. Mayor has a comment.
Sure, thank you. And just my final comment. So I do appreciate Councilor Shikawa's perspective, and no question when this first came back with steel pilings, extremely expensive, wrong idea. I'm still a fan of crib docks. They've lasted 100 years. Many of them are still around there. They tend to last better than steel. And you can always go down one or two rungs on the crib dock to rehab it going forward. So I'm certainly about that. The only one question I ask is, this rehab dock and the new design, you know, we had concrete decking on the old dock before. Are we talking about a new concrete deck? Or are we talking about putting some wood and a traditional dock and potentially less expensive? So I'll look to Director Becking. Again, I would be in support of replacing a crib dock with some wood and allowing some boats to park there and screwing it down. So if it goes underwater in the spring.
Mr. Chairman, in response to the mayor's question, yes, it's a conventional dock with good old-fashioned wooden screws with a view to properly being able to withstand any flooding or anything like that.
Good, thank you. And again, the supplementary on that one. Does the pricing that you've shown us in your report indicate removal at the same time? Is that including removal of the existing? Or is that 350 to 375 plus 50, I think I read, to remove it?
No, no, Mr. Chairman, the price that I've indicated is an all-inclusive price.
Good, okay, good. All right, listen, so to us all, I'm gonna look to you once again, just for some sort of favor. I do have a resolution here that I can read, and I'm sensing people on both sides of the fence. Do we have, you know, in terms of moving ahead with this as a project on itself, essentially it's a replacement. This isn't about a larger plan going forward. This is simply replacing what was there 2 years ago and was beyond damaged. So I think in the spirit of that, I would like to read this resolution unless I see, yeah, good. So I'm seeing a lot of nodding of heads. So it does seem okay, good. So I guess given that, sorry. He's down.
Right, I took it down. My only comment is, all we're doing is putting this out for tender. We're not awarding a contract. We're not doing anything. We're trying to see exactly how much it's going to cost under a new time frame. So I'm fully supportive of that.
Okay, good. Given that, I'll read this resolution. Moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend the Township Council to authorize staff to re-tender for the replacement of the Portage Street dock based on the design outlined in the staff report entitled Portage Street Dock dated September 16th, 2020. All those in favor? Show of hands. So Councillor Jaglis, I see you've got your blue hand up. Do you have a?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I did. I just, Mayor Harding indicated that we were not approving the expenditure. We were merely approving the tendering. And on that basis, I'm voting for it. However, the motion isn't that clear. So I would just like, just a clarification before the vote is counted, that this does not authorize the expenditure, only the tendering.
I can repeat that to authorize staff to re-tender for the replacement of the Portage Street dock based on the design provided. So, sorry? Yeah, certainly the award would come back, and the council would still contemplate that, as you would know, on a go forward. So this is the act of re-tendering.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, good. Then I would imagine, Cheryl, that makes it unanimous? No, it's carried. Okay, good. Thank you. That motion was carried. Now, in relation to that, 5B is a report again from Ken Becking, Public Works, on the reallocation of some funds to replace the Bert Sims Road dock at Skeleton Lake. Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have another dock which is in a similar state of repair. It's a much smaller dock, and staff are suggesting that given that we're not likely to need all of the funds that were allocated in the departmental budget for Portage Street, there's an opportunity to proceed with the Bert Sims dock, which is similarly closed, and get that off of our plate, as it were. Staff are recommending that it be replaced in like kind with what's there right now. So basically a 6-foot wide deck on a couple of crib foundations. In the alternative, you could go to a floater. However, you can expect that there's going to be additional costs for both capital as well as the longer term operating expense. Nonetheless, the choice is yours. In the alternative, you can opt not to replace the dock, in which case it should be removed in order to remove the township's liability. With respect to the current dock, the choice is yours.
Thank you, Director Becking. Any comments? I see no hands. I do see Councillor Roberts' hand. Gord?
Okay, I just think you should fix it. It's been there for a long time. We have a number of docks that are deteriorating. We got to do something. If we're not going to get the money from the Portage dock, then where is there money in this year's budget, someplace else, to repair this dock that is needed by the community?
Good. Just to confirm, thank you, Gord. Just to confirm, Ken, the price, the reallocation of funds is approximately how much?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe it's about $20,000,
Right.
and we will have ample funds within the surplus of the Portage dock to reallocate to deal with the additional expense.
Okay, listen, I have no, I see no other hands up, no requests for comment. I do have a resolution here that I would read, moved by Councillor Jaglowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council to approve a reallocation of funds from the Portage Street Dock project to fund the replacement of the Bert Sims Road Dock on Skeleton Lake. All those in favor, show of hands. Okay, good, thank you, carried. Okay, we have one last report, item 5C from Ken Becking regarding the rehabilitation of Highway 149. Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an information report just to make council aware, or committee aware rather, that the Ministry of Transportation has completed their transportation environmental study report for the rehabilitation of Highway 141 from essentially the village of Rosso through to a point about 10 kilometers to the east. The work will generally entail pavement rehabilitation, so a combination of grinding and pulverizing of the existing surface and repaving with replacement of the drainage structures, some grading improvements and rockfall protection, and replacement of the safety devices along the roadway, so guide rails and so forth. One point to bring to committee's attention is the fact that they are proposing a 4-week a 4-week full closure of the roadway in order to facilitate the replacement of a large structure, drainage structure, and they will be putting in place detours and the like in order to get traffic around the closure. Obviously, that will be well publicized prior to its happening, and staff expect that we will be consulted to make sure that we've got appropriate arrangements in place for emergency services and so forth. So anyway, if there are any questions, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer them.
Good, thank you. Committee, any thoughts on that? Okay, good. I don't have a resolution to that effect. That was for information, our information, and so thank you for providing that, Ken. I'm going to move on to 6A, which is a report from our financial services guru in this case, Mark Donaldson. Here comes the freight train of budget at us this early in September of 2020. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Mark Donaldson. He's got a PowerPoint presentation. Go ahead, Mark.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just want to confirm if I've been given host ability. There I am. So I'm just going to share my screen here.
You're good. You're good.
Okay, great, thank you. There is a report with this presentation, but I just wanted to go through quickly. So the Committee of the Whole earlier this year directed township staff to review and recommend revisions to the existing budget policies for consideration prior to the 2021 budget. And this presentation is intended to inform and solicit comments from the committee on the content and structure and confirm the direction of the new budget policy, and also receive requested direction from the committee on 3 key matters, which will help to shape the 2021 budget process this year. At the end of the presentation, we also will outline the general timeline for this year's process and next steps for the process this year. So in reviewing policies from other municipalities, certain themes started to emerge, which complement each other well and can serve as guiding principles for the budget policy. They're listed on the slide showing fiscal responsibility, sustainability, being strategic, and accountability and transparency. And each of these principles cover specific components within the budget policy and will serve to guide the process. And the policy is intended to be robust but flexible in order to allow the committee and council to direct specific initiatives within this framework that's being approved, that would be approved as part of the policy. So I'll just go through each of them very quickly. So fiscal responsibility, ensuring that we present balanced budgets, and the policy will outline how the township will respect municipal ratepayers and ensure that the funds are spent in a way that demonstrates value for money and takes a prudent approach to estimating revenues. Currently, the township does a multi-year capital plan, so it's a 10-year plan, but only 1 year for operating, a current operating plan. So there's a possibility that this policy could give opportunities to enhance that, to allow a longer horizon on the operating side that would be refreshed every year. So it wouldn't be a one-time approval of multiple years, but it would be a current year plan with outlook years or 1 year or more that would be refreshed on an annual basis based on new information and updates that occur over that calendar year. It would bring about some indications about how we would look at costs and cost recovery and be prudent in terms of our revenue estimates. We also look at possibility of a contingency within the operating budget for unknown costs that would give management, give staff more flexibility. It would be a small amount. It would be prescribed or recommended within the budget process as to what that contingency amount would be, but would allow for minor variances to be handled by staff without having to draw on reserves. And it would also encourage innovative solutions that would drive efficiencies in the future. About sustainability, we're looking at ensuring that we have clear definitions of what is operating and what is capital to promote a better understanding for the public in terms of those annual costs and that are funded through the current levy versus capital costs that are funded through one-time or recurring grants and draws from reserves. It would also, as I just alluded to earlier, look at the frequency to consider the levels of rates charged for certain services and ensure that we are maintaining a full recovery cost on some full cost recovery on some services. And also it would be notable that the funding of reserves should be determined with the possibility of setting targets. So around, we have a very elaborate and robust capital plan. So ensuring that we are appropriately funding reserves, and that could be set within the policy as well. That we're in, so to ensure we're in a well-positioned place to fund those investments in the future. Under strategic, I think the current work that's taking place on the strategic plan aligns with this principle well and ensures that the resources serves the mission of the township as identified in the strategic plan to be approved, and that there's a prioritization. There's a limited amount of resources, so there's a prioritization approach taken to ensure that we are dealing with first things first, and that it's very important ensuring that we are addressing the immediate needs of the township. And finally, on accountability and transparency, just ensuring that we have there's opportunities for the public to participate in the process as they currently do, and reinforcing that tenet, and ensuring that those comments are received. And then we start to develop key performance indicators. I think it's a good a good strategy in terms of reinforcing with the public how their tax dollars are used, and settles in well with the value for money concept. This is also reinforced, as we've discussed at previous meetings, around regular quarterly updates on revenues and expenses, just to ensure that there is public disclosure on where we're at and how we're tracking and where there are risks to the plan. So in terms of direction on key matters, and I think this is where we're looking for committee input. I'll go through each one of them. So the first one is just around the funding of reserves is critical. As I mentioned earlier, the 2020 budget forecasted reserves of discretionary reserves, excuse me, of $8.9 million at the end of 2020. But the 10-year plan for capital notes that there'll be over $65 million scheduled for expenditure over the next 10 years. So saving and financing for these investments is a part of the strategy that is really important and needs to be considered, and the staff are seeking support to include a reserve funding strategy that would set levels of funding and perhaps a floor ceiling approach, minimums, maximums for certain reserves, and a timeline to get to those levels. So at that, I don't know if, Chair, if you'd like me to go through each of these, or would pause and discuss each one individually.
I think we could look at, thank you, a very professional presentation. Welcome to the township. I guess we could look at this committee as the three issues. 1, 2, 3. Do we want to look at issue number 1 and provide some direction to staff to mark on that first piece of the establishing the framework for funding of reserves? Do we have any comments on that? I see, sorry, Councillor Jaglowitz. Councillor Jaglowitz, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you.
Good.
Yes, I'm happy to discuss them as they come. I think that's the simplest. My comment is that Mark, you're certainly heading us in a good direction, so I compliment you on that. My personal view on the reserve and capital funding is that the 10-year is important, but there are expenditures that go outside of that 10-year, and you see them all the time. In the 11th year, there might be something huge. So if it was possible, I'd like to see, and maybe you can't do it the first year, but that we actually have a 20-year horizon, and the 11 through 20 years is just in one column, but that the spreadsheets that back it up are looking at a longer horizon, so we know that even going past that 10-year, we're still in good shape. I also think we should have a policy that budget at all times should be balanced in the long term. I suppose there can be years where it's not funded properly, but there should be a plan to fund it long term. So those are my comments on that area.
Good, thank you. I suppose this column could be called the direction, input, comments. Mayor Harding has a thought. Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, and appreciate raise lower, the presentation, Mark. Going forward, you know, the 11th year or 12th year, I mean, if we have a $65 million 10-year capital budget, on average, we're $6.5 million a year. Are we ever going to have a $12 million year? I think, you know, it's a rolling average. When we add year 11, we drop year 1, and we have a new 10-year snapshot. I'm not sure, you know, again, if we show years 11 to 20 and we have another $65 million, then theoretically we're going to be on target, whatever our funding level is. And I'm not sure we're going to be that predictive on the way out. But I like the concept that says we have a budget policy that ensures our 10-year capital is balanced, and that there's money going away annually to support that 10-year capital. I think the other thing that we also need to fully understand, and we've talked about this through asset management programs, but can we afford the $65 million? Like, let's look at our assets and the cost. And I think we really need to roll up our sleeves over the next 2 years of this and set a long-term vision is 65 million an appropriate 10-year capital? What's the 10-year capital of our comparators? What's in Bracebridge? What's in Huntsville? You know, they've got swimming pools and arenas and some big, massive stuff.
Yep.
Do we need that or do we not need that? We know nobody else in this province has 10 fire stations. You know, we've got our new master fire plan. Nobody else probably has 10 community centers. So those are some of the questions that I think we need to really understand. Can we vest ourselves of some of the unused assets? I'll leave it at that.
Wow, good. I see no other hands, and I wonder, Mark, if I might, not to put you on the spot, but you have in your little kit bag, do you have a couple of thoughts on that very framework and point number one from your own perspectives, or is that a fair question?
Absolutely, Chair, and I do think that long-term planning is really a critical piece for any organization. It's short and long-term is taken as a balance in both lenses, and I think that thinking about what those expenditures are going to be in the long term and being prepared for them today, so that when they happen in the future, we're in good shape, I think is a very prudent approach. And I would certainly encourage, I would be thinking that the funding of reserves should be very strategic, and we should be trying to smooth it out as much as possible to avoid those critical moments when things occur and you wish you were in a place that you're not. So.
Good. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to call on Councilor Kelly. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'm just going to throw my hand in with both the comments of Mayor Harding and Mr. Donaldson. Long-term planning is boring. Long-term planning extends beyond the sort of lifespan of anybody's guaranteed term on council, but is absolutely, I think two things. First of all, I think it's a big weakness in how we, in my experience with how we've done budgeting in the past. But I also think that it's a weakness when it comes to making short-term funding decisions. We don't have any context. We don't have any overarching kind of funding strategy that extends beyond how much money have we got in our pocket and how much of that should we spend today. So I think building a more robust opportunity is vital.
Good, so we're certainly in agreement on that. Councilor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, I just have a question, because I know last year when we did our tour with Mr. Becking and our fire chief, that was to look at our assets. And I guess my question to this first issue is, are we starting to prepare some sort of a report on our community centers, on our fire halls? Are we starting into some sort of a report on our capital expenditures? That would be my question.
I'll call on
comprehensive report.
How about that? So Derek Hammond, our CAO, has a comment.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So certainly, Councillor Bridgman, I think, as we go through our strategic plan discussions, that's an area of interest for council. I have previously indicated that Mr. Donaldson and I will come back with recommendations for the municipal modernization funding. I suspect once we have a little bit more, once we receive public feedback on the strategic plan directions and we've got a little bit firmer direction from council, Mr. Donaldson and I will come back after we've had a chat with the strategic leadership team with a view to embarking on some master plans / studies for looking at, to the mayor's point, what is our vision for those types of infrastructure, and adjusting or correlating that with our asset management plan, along with the funding plan that Mr. Donaldson's referred to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a quick.
Barb, does that answer your question? Supplementary?
Yes, it does. And thank you. And I just want to confirm that I am the direction that we've got up on the board here. I am in complete agreement with. Just let you know that.
Good, thank you. Okay, so I see no other comments on point one. Point number two would be the reconfirmation, if you will, of the General Finance Committee as it now exists as a group of 10 will set guidelines and recommend budget submissions to council. Do you have any comment on that? Again, we're simply reconfirming that is the process going forward. Does anyone have any comments on that? Okay, Councillor Jagowitz, go ahead. And then Harding.
Yes, I do. Thank you. I just wanted a clarification on that point. It seems to me that it's important that either all or part of council be involved in a kind of line-by-line review of department budgets. And so if I understand this correctly, then that detailed review would take place at a General Finance Committee meeting with all 10 there. So the idea of having a small subcommittee to do some of their grunt work is not in the plan. Is that, maybe you could clarify that for me?
Thank you. I guess in terms of clarification, I could provide just some insight, and that is that I do believe that now that we have a more fulsome, if you will, all of Council, General Finance Committee, as we were batting this around, it just seemed that it would be very difficult to establish a subcommittee. I don't know, one councillor from each ward. And that's why it's here today for people to discuss this. So maybe I might just reserve any other comment until we hear from some others. Councillor Jagowitz, but thanks for bringing that up. So I'll call on Councillor Kelly.
Supplementary.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just a supplementary. So, and I'm not opposed to that, by the way, Mr. Chair, but I would, are you confirming that there would be sufficient time set aside for the committee to get into a detailed discussion of the budget as opposed to the kind of overview that has been done in the past?
Okay, thank you for that. I would look to the CAO or the clerk. Well, I guess I would look to the CAO on that pretty overarching question. I guess the question is, would we as committee be given the time necessary in your mind? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So in researching the notion of a committee, staff went back to the policies pursuant to the procedural bylaw and determined that council had already identified the General and Finance Committee as the committee that was intended to review the budget. As to the more general question about level of detail of review of budget, et cetera, I think this policy will speak to that. But perhaps Mr. Donaldson may have some more detailed comments. Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, and just to reiterate, so the standing committee for this standing committee actually has the scope within its specific areas of business to review the capital and current budget. So that is correct. And I think we'll talk about the timeline in a couple of slides, but just in the interest of ensuring that we are able to do a thorough presentation and review for the committee and for council, and still have an approval that is appropriate and I think necessary for us to be able to, as staff, to execute the plan as approved by council. We'll be looking to try to ensure that we are diligent in terms of the number of meetings we're having and that we're able to cover things off in a very thorough but expedited way and ensure that full disclosure is provided in a way that serves the purpose of the committee.
Okay, I'm going to go down our list. Thank you, Mark, of the four people that with their hand up. So I'm going to go start with the mayor. Phil?
Thank you very much. Again, one thing I've noted about this council is everybody wants to be involved. So this is our General and Finance Committee, and as such, the decision should, I believe, come through here. I do note that we had issues in the past when we set up a subcommittee, not in this council, but to look at any budgets, because that subcommittee would make recommendations and council wouldn't get an opportunity to vote on it. Like, it truly got removed It wasn't like, do you confirm? It was that subcommittee made recommendations. We never saw a potential funding, or they canceled funding to somebody. So I think this is appropriate forum. I am concerned with the concept or the notion that this committee will go line by line. I do not believe it is council's job to go line by line in an operating budget. I firmly believe that we set direction. We said just a 2% to 3% or whatever increase along the way, or a reduction, and staff do their job and provide us with recommendations of how to get there. If we need to go deeper, we would follow staff's recommendations and the pluses and minuses about how to get there. But for us to do staff's job, I don't believe is appropriate. I'm very concerned about us going down that road. I think the idea here is we have some high level direction and that staff will follow that. So I just want to make sure that my perspective is we are going to separate ourselves, and we're going to become the board of directors, as we should be, of this corporation, and let staff do their job.
Fair enough, and good commentary. Certainly we understand. And again, this is going forward. We would propose it to go forward to an October 14th council. So we'll have additional opportunities clearly to discuss this at length. I'm going to call on Councillor Kelly and then Councillor Ishikawa.
Thank you, and through you. I don't think this has already been answered, but again, maybe a little bit of a similar comment to what I made before. Doing a line-by-line review, building a budget, for many people is a long, boring, laborious process, and mired in detail. It takes a certain personality to actually enjoy the process, and I don't think everybody shares that, first of all. And secondly, the time commitment is enormous if that's going to happen. And I do not want to cast any aspersions on the meeting so far, but I think we spent like 38 minutes talking about a speed zone in Bala, and using Ken Becking's math, 10 tens or under, that means 3.4 weeks, I would think, spent building a budget if 10 people get around the table and start wanting to have an opinion and express a point of view. So I'm going to again reiterate what Mayor Harding said, that at some point in time this group needs to take responsibility for the budget and make its recommendation on to council. But I think it would be impossible to expect that this thing could be done line by line or built by, or I just can't see how that would ever work practically. That's my.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to draw attention to Mark's commentary there. Identify level of review by committee that he's put in that directional box. Yeah, we'll have an opportunity to discuss that further in 30 days. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I don't intend on going line by line, although I want to see line by line. I would like that information so that I can identify when someone asks me a question, I will be able to have some understanding of that, yes, something has been designated for this year or whatever. I'm a little bit, I also want to ensure that the members of the public, and I will say there's been a strong group of people since the early 2000s for me that have followed our budget very, very closely. Over the last few years, some of those members, I think, were frustrated. They appeared that they could not get their comments moved forward or acknowledged. So I really want to make sure that the public input is much greater than we've allowed in the last few years. And, you know, when we're talking about line by line, historically, what council was looking at was actual things that the public was touching and feeling on a daily basis. So for instance, if all of a sudden somebody was to come back and say, holy cow, the Torrance Community Center cost you $50,000 this year. Those members of the Torrance Community Center are going to say, well, why did that happen? Because that is not the case. Now, don't build a case to close the community center. Those are the kinds of things that happen when people can't acknowledge or understand how money are being spent. So I don't know what that looks like on a spreadsheet or anything else, but I think we have to be aware that we do need to have, in my opinion, better public input. But I would also like to have an understanding, again, historically, I used to be able to pick up my budget, not the last few years as clearly. I could pick up the budget and say, oh, I see 10 years from now, this road is going to get repaired. I would still like to see that information. And so, because the questions are always coming up, when are you going to work on Southwood? Well, it was worked on in 2010. Those kinds of things I think are important to know as a counselor moving forward.
Good, thank you, and great information as Mark is identifying these, noting them. And again, that's what this session is all about. So excellent, thank you for that. If I don't see any other, I would move on to point 3, which is to confirm the annual development of multi-year operating budget, and if so, number of years. You'll recall, and certainly in the previous point as well, that council is being heard, and these are things that were discussed, and they are being brought forward now to discuss again as it relates to 2021. I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. You have seen these topics before. So I would ask for a commentary now on the consideration of perhaps a multi-year operating budget. Again, that was discussed last year very initially, and that was it. So we're bringing it here to have this type of discussion. I'm going to call on the mayor.
Yes, 100%. Love a 2-year, multi-year budget.
Okay, Councilor Nishikawa, you did have your hand up, sorry.
I was actually going to suggest 3-year, but I think I am going to stick with my 3-year. Thank you.
Okay, good. So I'm hearing an appetite for an elongated process. I would call on Councilor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Mark. I'm really glad you raised this point. I certainly support a current plus 2-year budget, and I like your concept that it's not cast in stone. It's a rolling budget, so that it's up. All 3 years are updated every year. Obviously, we only base our taxes on the current year, but we can kind of see how it's heading out. I think that's an excellent approach, and I support it.
Good, thank you. Wonder, I see a nodding of heads. Councilor Jagowitz, you have your hand up again?
No.
No, good, thank you. So it seems generally, Councilor Hayes has a comment before I summarize.
Yeah, I would support a current plus 2 years. That'll get the new council, it'll give them a chance to get their feet under them before they have to look at a full budget. So I think that's good plan. Good, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other comments. I do seem to believe there is, as Mark has noted, general support for a multi-year operating budget. It seems we've landed on 2 years as a general piece of information. So I think, Mark, you could take that away as 2 years or more. I'm not sure how that discussion unfolds, but we can certainly, again, in October, perhaps chat on that, but it's good information for you here and now. Councilor Jagowitz has his hand up. Oh, you're muted, Frank.
Okay, thank you. I heard differently, Mr. Chair. I heard that there was more support for a current year plus 2 years, which is 3, than I did for a total of 2 years. So before we leave that subject, maybe you want to poll that again if I was incorrect on that.
Good, thank you. Just to clarify, if I might, back to Ruth Nishikawa, Councilor Nishikawa, does is what Councillor Jag was just said.
That's exactly what I was reading. So
Good.
I just added them together, and I thought much along the line that Donelda had said, that first year of being on council, it's a tough one for that committee to pull the budget together, but I think using this 3-year method, or current plus 2 years, is a good transition.
Good, thank you. I appreciate the consensus. So with that clarity, we can move on. Thank you. Mark?
And thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for that direction. It certainly is very helpful. And just on the last point, the policy itself can speak to a multi-year budget, but I think it would be flexible enough that within the guidelines each year, the council of that particular year could choose to vary the number of years of outlook. So again, going back to my concept about being robust but being flexible. So that's very helpful. So just a quick overview in terms of the proposed budget process. So in the recommendation of the report, we're asking the ability to come to council in October with guidelines and the draft policy, just in the interest of time, so that we can have our official kickoff. Of course, work is taking place now. Departments are thinking about 2021, but we would get approval for guidelines in October, bring a draft policy forward for discussion, and then bring a draft budget presentation back to committee prior to the Christmas holidays. So in December meeting, take comments back, would then provide an updated draft on those comments in January, go out for public consultation early in 2021 with the expectation of landing a tax supported budget presented to council in February. So a very compressed timeline, very aggressive, but I've put a bit of a chevron graph for the whole year in terms of Treasury Department activities. And for us, the sooner we can get the budget landed and approved by council, we certainly have a myriad of other activities that we would get into during the year, and it allows departments to start to exercise that plan as well, so very quickly. So that's a quick overview of the budget process, or a draft of what it would look like. So just in terms of next steps, so we will be bringing documents forward at the next council meeting. Staff, as I mentioned, staff are already beginning preliminary work on their budgets for 2021, and we will be looking at out years as well. And our implementation of our Questica budgeting for this year, which is going very well, will allow that capability for multi-year planning. So that'll be a great functionality, great tool we'll be able to use in that software that was approved by council for purchase this year. And we'll begin with the scheduling of meetings to get things landed in people's calendars so we can stick to that draft timeline. So with that, that concludes this presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen, and if there are any other follow-up comments, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. We do have some comments from a few. I'm going to call on Councillor Jagowitz first.
Thank you, Mark. If it's possible to put up the 2021 proposed budget process schedule, I'd appreciate it. But if not, I'll just speak to it. You glossed over it quite quickly. I fully support this time frame for 2021, but I would encourage you to change it for 2022 and 2023 if possible. I'm a believer that a budget should be set before you go into the fiscal year, not partway through. So I would like to see in the long term that our budget is approved in January or in December or January at the latest. So I would suggest that if it's possible, that in 2022, you shift those back and have the guidelines in September, resulting in a approved budget in January, and for 2023, that we go back to August and end up at December as a target. And although I have no problem with this time frame for this year, you're new, and it'll then give you much more time throughout the year for other priorities. Thank you.
Mark, is that within your scope to consider that on your report for October?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. And I'm totally on that line of thinking as well. It is because of the the extra steps this year in terms of the new policy, that we are a little bit later than I would hope, but I certainly would aspire to be able to bring budget documents and presentations to council early enough to provide for a December approval.
Good, thank you. I'll call on Councilor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, Mr. Donaldson, how is that new software working? Is it completely running now? I just like an update, that's all.
Absolutely, and through you, Chair. So we are still in implementation. We are populating information from our GL system so that they line up, so they will talk to each other, and it will allow the Questica software to pull actuals, so we'll be able to do reporting in the new Questica software. We're scheduled to go live around Thanksgiving, so we've got about another five or 6 weeks of work to get us to go live, and then we'll do our staff training and we'll be off to the races shortly towards the end of October.
Great, thank you.
Good, thank you. Yes, Councilor Nishikawa, and then the mayor.
Thank you. Mark, actually, maybe my question should be the mayor. Historically, we have given a percentage of what we're hoping to achieve during these discussions, and I'm wondering, have we had that discussion and I missed it? Or I know we've had the discussion at district, and I'm just wondering if we have a targeted 2% increase, whatever that would be. Where's that discussion at the moment?
Thank you. So that would be part of the budget guidelines discussion, which we would be bringing forward next month to council for consideration.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councilor? Okay, I guess it does. Mayor Harding.
Thank you. Just Councilor Jaguars brought up the fact of going forward, having budgets finished by the end of the calendar year before the next calendar year starts. My concern, I guess, with that concept is the seasonality of our work, snow, everything else. We won't have an accurate picture of what we did last year until we can kind of close off this year's books. And I know we're always kind of playing catch up. We continue some base funding. We do it in the first few months. But if we get out too far and we start doing budget guidelines and looking in June, let's say, for next year in July, we really don't have the data. I'm concerned we may not have the data. And I'll look to you, Mark, to understand that. We don't necessarily know all the funding programs that are coming through from a government perspective. Generally speaking, most municipalities that I know of implement, and it's a January, February, March perspective. That first quarter of the new year is when the budgets are implemented. So I think funding from the province comes down late or early in the new year always. That helps us identify those. I just put it out there. Maybe Mr. Hammond has more information from other municipalities and everything else, and or Mark yourself as to from a provincial perspective. There's risks in getting too far ahead of ourselves on a process, I think.
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that one. So Chair, and I totally agree. I think that if you start too early, there is a risk that there's gaps in information that will inform decisions that you would have otherwise made had you known. But I think that starting a process earlier, like October, to me, I think this year is an anomaly for what I would target. I think that we would probably want to start sooner than that, in the hopes of at least having the majority of our forecast somewhat landed close to the end of the year, in terms of being able to present to council something that they can start to digest before we get over the Christmas holidays. So I think we would get to a place where we could have a well-grounded and a well thought through plan. A lot of our expenses, I think, are fairly recurring and fairly predictable, and I think there are some anomalies, as you say, with respect to funding. I think that one of the exercises that we will try to endeavor to get into as well, and then we'll talk about future meetings is around our ability to forecast our as well, to predict. So while we may not have 100% certainty on the current year before we finish the next year's budget, I think we will try to give ourselves some level of comfort that we have some predictability of where the year is going to end, so that we can use that as a launch pad for the following year. So no budget is going to be, there's always going to be some variables and some gaps. And I think that as we go through the year, we can update those unknowns and substitute them for the knowns as they become available to us. And that helps to kind of guide decisions throughout the year as well, not just in the setting of the original operating budget.
Good. Thanks, Mark. I'm going to call on the CAO for comment.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just further to Mr. Donaldson's comments, the one thing in my experience that it is difficult to predict, and Mr. Donaldson referred to them as anomalies, things like winter control. Hard to predict any given year, but I think, as we move forward to build, we can look to the past to try and predict as accurately as possible. I think with climate change, we may need to react to storm events, spring freshets, etc., over time. But I think that, from a prudence perspective, Mr. Donaldson's suggestion with respect to a minor contingency fund in the operating budget may assist us in that regard to some extent. And then, of course, his commentary with respect to the need to plan better for our reserves will assist us if we have more larger expenses with respect to those anomalies. Thank you.
Good, thank you, sir. Are there any other thoughts on that? I just would want to say, from my perspective, perhaps to the CAO, given that we 4 months ago approved the 2020 budget in May, did we, as a township, were there any inherent problem? Can we look back on it now and say, we were the 444th municipality to approve their budget? Was that okay? Did we? I haven't heard anything to the contrary, so I would imagine, we survived that. Did we take any hits as a result of that lag, if you will?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to refer to Mr. Donaldson with respect to any trends, but I would offer this observation to committee. It's interesting. Obviously, I think we would have all preferred to have a budget finalized and out the door earlier in the year. But it's interesting, I think, with the advent of COVID, the late approval of the budget actually allowed us to better anticipate and plan for how we were going to run our organization throughout the balance of the year in that new sort of reality, if you will. I think as it relates to the details of the financials, that will bear themselves out, and perhaps Mr. Donaldson has a comment on that.
Yeah, thank you, and through your chair. So I think that 2020 has been a year of atypical circumstances throughout. So I think that in terms of us passing our budget so late, I think that the only disadvantage to that has just been where staff have had to delay or they've been deferred in terms of starting to procure or do certain projects that were part of that approval. If it had been approved earlier, they could have got an earlier start. And I think that's the best advantage for us. But beyond that, I think that we're continuing to monitor and operate in a very careful and prudent way for 2020, and we've done our Q2 report, and we'll be bringing forward a Q3 report with a forecast to the end of the year of our final position as best we can anticipate at this point in November to September 30th. And I think that the facts in that will give us a certain good sense of how we're doing and how we expect 2020 to end up.
Good, thank you. Listen, I do believe that we're in a very strong position as a corporation. I appreciate the people that are here. The learning curve that has gone on, been very rapid. It's been in 2020. I would suggest that we're in good shape as we move forward on a very weighty topic, that being our 2021 budget. So I appreciate too the committee's commentary on this really excellent conversation, I think, back and forth. I do have a resolution to read here, moved by Councilor Mazan and seconded by Councilor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that as per direction received on September 16th, 2020, that staff be directed to bring forward an updated budget policy and guidelines for 2021 budget development for council to consider at their October 14th, 2020 meeting. All those in favor, a show of hands, please. Good. We're good. Good. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to, I'm going to acknowledge the minutes of the Public Library Board meeting held on June 9th, 2020 were accepted into the record. 7B, the minutes of the Parks and Trails Committee meeting held on July 23rd, 2020. I would call on the chair to provide comment. If there is comment, Ruth, any thoughts on the minutes of the July 23rd meeting?
The minutes are as presented, and if anyone has any questions, they can certainly ask. I'm very aware that this meeting is getting close to 2 hours and others may have to have a bathroom break. So if there's not any questions, that's great.
Okay, is there any comments on that? Happy to have a 5-minute break if necessary. We still have a little bit to go through. Does that make sense to everyone? Maybe we can come back at 11 o'clock. How about that?
Sounds perfect.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll see you at 11 o'clock. Thanks. Okay, good.
Okay, there you go.
Good to go.
We're still missing those two. But we have a quorum, so.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. There's Councilor Nishikawa. So, good, thank you. So we're back. We had left off with the Parks and Trails Committee minutes. Perhaps we can revisit that, Ruth, when we discuss item 8A, which is the minutes of the Economic Development and Grants Committee, item 8B, as it relates to economic development, township winter initiative. So, okay, so moving on then, we'll certainly accept those minutes into the record. 8A, the minutes of the Economic Development Grants Committee held on August the 6th. I'd call on the chair of ECDev, Peter Kelly, to provide a brief overview of those minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, I'm not going to walk through the minutes. They are self-explanatory, but I did want to take just 2 minutes and just talk a little bit about, I would say, recent developments with the Economic Development Committee. We've struggled over the last many months, a year, primarily because we've lost so many of our citizen members who either moved away and had to resign or got too busy and had to leave. We've now, I think, got almost a full complement. I think we have one more to replace, but we have a nice stable group. We found, I think, a good strike zone for meeting. A couple of our meetings were cut short because people had to leave and, quorum was lost. But here's the good news. I think for the last couple of months, there's been a really renewed and vigorous focus on the plight of business operators in the Township of Muskoka Lakes. It's an enormously difficult time, not just here, but across the world, perhaps, to be an independent business operator, to have your entire future hung out on your ability to attract and sell stuff to people. Our businesses locally have stood their ground on the best that they can under the circumstances. I would say, without being overly dramatic, put themselves at some personal risk to be essentially a frontline warrior, serving customers, serving our constituents. The good news is that I think some of the businesses have actually done better than expected, maybe better than they ever have through the last several months. There was a big shift in demand among the population, moved to sort of home comfort, creature comforts, to local recreational activities, and I think that's helped some of our businesses. The other thing that we've been working on recently, and Corey is going to speak under 8B to walk us through some of the winter activities that we're working on, both because we have constituents that need physical outlets and for their own mental health and their physical well-being, and also because our local businesses can prosper from opportunities that people have to come here and take part in recreational activities. We've been really focusing on this extended season. There are a lot more people up here through September, October, perhaps right through to Christmas, maybe all through the winter. So the question is, how can we as a township help our business constituents take best advantage of that? We have a much, I would say, better, although I really don't know that it was ever that bad. We have a terrific relationship with the Chamber of Commerce, and we've been working closely with them. And I'm actually quite optimistic that many of our local businesses are doing okay, and they will continue to do okay or even better than okay if we're able to support them. And just as a last reminder, I think supporting them includes every one of us patronizing them, buying something from them, spending our money locally as opposed to somewhere else or at a big box. So with that having been said, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them. And seeing none, I will go back on mute. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Excellent preamble and setting the table, if you will, for Corey Moore, our Community and Economic Development Specialist relating to township winter initiatives, I suppose, out of the Economic Development Committee structure, and interested in hearing his report. So Corey, you've got the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Chair Kelly a good leadway into the report and a good overview on some good work that's being completed by our Grants and Economic Development Advisory Committee. Today's report highlights a list of potential winner initiatives that were identified by that Grants and Economic Development Committee and is brought forward today for consideration by the General Finance Committee. As Chair Kelly had stated, the committee has got some good traction the last couple months on our meetings and continuing discussions to support local businesses during COVID-19 and beyond, as highlighted in our economic development strategy. With that, the committee recommended making some of the township's outdoor amenities available year-round, in particular the winter, to assist with creating conditions locally in an effort to help extend the seasons. The group felt that a focus on the township's outdoor recreational assets, such as our trails, walking paths, would encourage people to get outside in a healthy way during COVID-19 and support local businesses while doing so. Additionally, the committee recognizes that our economic development strategy does highlight that the environment is the economy in Muskoka Lakes, and we are definitely aware of how our natural assets help provide to the local business community, in particular the tourism industry. A full list of activities have been highlighted in the report and include a few, just to touch on a few, keeping the a few hiking trail parking lots plowed to encourage snowshoeing, in Bala at the sports park and Hannah Park, keeping the walking paths cleared to provide the opportunity for residents to get outside and go for a walk. We touched on a cross-country ski trail at the Milford Bay Golf Course, and the possibility, if a committee would require a further report on the possibility of some decorative winter lighting on our street posts in downtown Bala and Port Carling. With that, Chair, I am happy to assist with any further questions.
Good, thank you. Excellent report. Councillor Hayes.
Yes, through you to Corey. If I'm not mistaken, I think Heart Lake parking lot is cleared all year, because I know that there's hikers in there during the winter as well as the other 3 seasons. Also, with the lights, are they going to be intrusive for the dark sky? That would be my first question. And secondly, will they interfere with the pole decorating that's done in Bala? Because many businesses go out and choose a pole and decorate it in Bala, and it's quite amazing to see all the different and unique decorations.
Good, thank you. I'll call on the mayor.
Thank you. I think these are great ideas and great initiatives. Really excited. Obviously don't want to conflict with certain Christmas decorations, the street lighting, but this lighting, white twinkle lights, they could be up all year round. And our towns, when you drive in them, are not very appealing, especially in the evening hours. You go to most quaint towns and villages throughout the US, even Southern Ontario, my old town of Unionville. It's a quaint, beautiful white twinkle lights in the trees, 365 days a year. You know you're in a very special place, and we just don't have that. So I'm fully supportive of doing things like that.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. It's unfortunate that the Trails Committee, and I'm going to speak primarily about the volunteers of our Trails Committee, very, very smart gentlemen who we've been having these kind of conversations. But I would like to ask that in future we take consideration of a committee of council and not exclude them. I have concerns with some of the recommendations. Absolutely love the idea, and we talked about this actually for years, of having cross-country skiing through the golf course. I don't believe, and it's been my experience being involved in many activities in the township over the years, that it is not something that staff has to maintain or manage. Hardy Lake Park is a perfect example where there happens to be two gentlemen that go in, break the trail very, very early in the mornings. One by snowshoe and the next one coming along by, there's an actual process, I will say. So one comes in by snowshoe, the other one comes in by skis. And that sets the pace of that trail. Very rarely do you see people going off that trail once it's been established. I have strong concerns about Huckleberry. Yes, last year we plowed it in March because of COVID. In trail development, it's fairly well known that you don't mix motorized vehicles with pedestrian traffic. There is motorized vehicles. I wish we could herd them and control them, but there's motorized vehicles on Huckleberry Trail. And I believe that actually, from what I have seen over the years, when you plow out an area, it then becomes a staging area for much of that type of equipment. So I have concerns about that particular location. I know it would be fantastic. The other issue is you kind of might as well be sending people up on bare rock and hoping nobody's going to have an accident. And much along the way, when I think about incidences that have happened in the Barrens as well as Hardy Lake, when we've had fire situations and it's taken the fire staff huge amounts of time, labor, everything else, because we don't have that type of equipment to navigate these narrow trails and things. I'm just really concerned what liability our township wants to take on. We could be talking more about our urban trails. We could be introducing people to other areas that are being walked that don't involve dangerous terrains. And I would say Huckleberry is dangerous terrains when it comes to the winter time. So I'm just really concerned about that. I would have liked to have respectfully, I would have liked to have had our committee engaged in this. Because again, it's like, well, what are they doing then? You know, what is their purpose? And I sure hope we're not sending that message to them.
Thank you. And so certainly I sat on the Economic Development Committee. There was no intent in that whatsoever. And in fact, I think this is your opportunity. This is Parks and Trails opportunity. There is a resolution that asks that we push this to council to approve winter maintenance activities, but it doesn't isolate which one. So I would suggest that right now what we're talking about is how this thing really shapes up, how it looks. So you haven't been excluded. The Parks and Trails are lockstep. We only met as an Economic Development Committee very recently to move this concept forward. I would ask if Corey, and not to be difficult, but Corey, I wonder if it's possible for you to somehow show on the screen the incredible TML asset base, the inventory of parks, trails, arenas, outdoor, if you will, recreational facilities within our township. The scope of it was quite alarming to me, surprising to me, to be quite honest, in terms of the magnitude of it. Is that something you could do, Corey, or?
I can work on getting that up right now if you maybe want to just give me a few minutes.
Because I think the others, some of the others that didn't have the benefit of that, when you see it on one screen, on one matrix, it's quite amazing. I mean, what a resource. I think it's wise that we attempt to do whatever we can to tap into it. And again, I would say to Parks and Trails, please lockstep, hand in hand. This is a great opportunity to engage, to embrace, to use your expertise to the idea, because we are separate committees now. Here we are together. This is every opportunity you have. I would call on Councillor Kelly while Corey may be able to pull that up. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, you actually probably just said in a much more polite way what I was going to say. So I think you're right. I think you know, we're looking out for the interests of the economic development side. To the extent that we would see an opportunity to use the trails, that's great, but it shouldn't preclude any responsibility on the part of the Trails Committee to deal with the same issue if they choose to do it.
Okay, thank you. I'll call on the mayor.
Thank you. And I appreciate Councilor Nishikawa's comments about Huckleberry Rock in particular being multi-use. There is a snowmobile trail that runs through the park up on the rock that people go out and look out over Milford Bay. But I'll be honest with you, people are walking up there on the snowmobile trail. It's not a trail that anyone is traveling at any speed on. And as we move throughout Muskoka, people walk on the snowmobile trails, people cross-country ski on the snowmobile trails regularly. What I do know, I think somebody actually got stuck in there trying to get into that parking lot last year, had to be towed out. And I almost got stuck pulling in there once this spring with my truck. And I just, to clear it, get some people off the road, I think is not a bad thing. I don't believe a snowmobile ever is going to use that as a staging area. They would use Bracebridge in particular. Nowhere else in Port Carling does anybody really stage out of Port Carling. It's not a drop zone on that trail. So I think the two could coexist, and if we just open up a parking lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Before I let the other councilors, Mazan and Roberts, I will let Councilor Nishikawa in for, I don't know, a comment.
Absolutely, in trail guidance, so all of the literature that's being put out mostly that I've read from the province, but as well as noted people that have built trails across the country, including Hap Wilson. It says very clearly, and I think, I don't have it in front of me, but I think even our trails playbook says the same thing. You don't mix motorized vehicles with pedestrian traffic. And to say that let's hope that they're going to go to a certain speed or whatever, that's type of attitude is not out there right now. Nor did we ever expect that Hardy Lake Park has now become a campsite. It's a horrible thing to see, but that's what's happening now. We're losing control up here. So I would be very cautious. And I have heard that lots of people are planning on staying at their cottages now, and that they're planning on getting new toys. But those same folks haven't lived here in the wintertime to understand even traffic flows, but the use of our facilities. I absolutely support the, and we have been using our park systems where we can, where they're safe and accessible. We have had them opened up in the wintertime, which is great. And I did want to add to Corey that I'm working with a gentleman that happens to build apps, or he supports companies that build apps. So we are looking into that possibility of, I know that we've done a little bit within our township on our municipal signs. Hey, Gord, I'm going to say it right, but our Q code, basically, so people would be able to walk up to maybe only one small sign in Hardy Lake Park on the outskirts, because we can't put any signs in Hardy Lake Park, that will actually direct people to the businesses that happen to be listed in that thing. So it certainly, our Trails Committee has always had the discussions about how do we tie this in with economic development. I was happy when I was at Hardy Lake Park yesterday with the police and our fire chief to note how many cars were actually making a right-hand turn towards Bala, because historically that hasn't been the case. So it is happening. I will tell you that the Muskoka Trails Council spends couple of $100 a month on advertising. There is no lack of advertising with our trail systems. So, you know, when you're looking at that, but I look forward to working further with Corey to enhance some of those things.
Good, thank you. I'll call on Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you, probably repeating some of the things that have already been stated, but this is perhaps one of the silver linings I've seen through COVID is things that maybe we've been talking about as ideas and for future planning, all of a sudden landing on our laps, quite frankly. We listened last night to the Chamber of Commerce hosted a what to expect session, and included in that was the new executive director of Muskoka Tourism, the team lead for the economic task force, a bunch of the business owners, a few of us on council. And there really is an interesting movement happening now. And there's some energy around gathering, like who's coming up. So we will be finding out more information through some surveys that they are being conducted and through the district. And one of the things that continues to be highlighted, and I promise I did not plant this question, but somebody specifically said it would just be really nice to know that there's other things like areas for people to go and to know where those are. The local secrets, I think, was one of the terms that was used last night. And that's something I think on the economic development team, and I view this as a real opportunity, is to say, okay, let's be smart in how we do this. But this is one time when economic development is saying we really see the value in our natural assets, and we've been hearing that loud and clear. And we heard it again last night. We heard it from the some of the resort owners saying, you know, when we have people up, we like to be able to tell them to go somewhere. So I saw and I heard from our new executive director last night. She'd made a lot of notes, and is there things that we can do to be smart, to be creative, to support our community, not just those who are visiting, but those that are also here. And so personally, I get quite excited. I grew up going outside here in Muskoka, and I often get frustrated when I hear we don't have ski hills, because I'm thinking here we are in the Township of Muskoka Lakes, which is a world-renowned brand. We have these beautiful natural assets, and this is an opportunity for us to start. And I'm talking baby steps, because I think that the Parks and Trails Committee probably does have a plethora of information and knowledge. And I view this as a marriage now. We're coming together and saying, let's do this one together. So I appreciate you guys giving me that chance to say that. And yeah, that's it. I think I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Before I call on Councillor Roberts, I would just want to ask, I suppose, a question. Parks and Trails, I'm presuming, has the same composition as economic development, that being 4 councillors and then a public contingent. Is that true? Sorry, perhaps you, clerk. Is that, am I aware, or is that 2 councillors? Okay, good. So that answers my question. So I'm wondering if, and again, this is impromptu as heck, but I'm wondering if for 6 months, perhaps, or pick a time frame where one of the 4 economic development councillors could go to the meetings for the Parks and Trails in an effort to work together and carry messaging back and forth, if you will, from Parks and Trails and economic development, if that's something we could consider. That being, there's 4 of us, 2 of you, there's no quorum issues, so we could just be, we'd slip right in. And I think too, then, you know, the joining of hands, the marriage, as Councillor Mazan has indicated, would be a much stronger link. And you seem to have meetings, that Parks and Trails seem to have meetings before economic development. So from a calendarization thing, it could work. I'd be happy to put my hand up, or perhaps one of the others would. So there's Councillor Mazan saying, so anyway, I'm not sure if that's something we can even do, because that changes the composition. Can we just do it for a period of time, perhaps 6 months, while we execute the township winter initiatives? I'm not sure. Do we have any, does anyone have a sense of that, or do we want to just go right to Gord? Okay, I see Councillor Hayes, and again, I'm not trying to put you on the shelf, Gord, but I know we'll give you the last word. Councillor Hayes.
I know we're trying to provide things that people can do in the winter, and beautifying our towns with twinkle lights, I think, is great. But once we get them there, what are we going to do with them? In Bala, we have restaurants open all year long, and we have stores that are open all year long. Is the economic development going to be looking at trying to get stores in Port Carling to stay open all year round? Like,
I know I could speak to that. I mean, it's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
and
one of the reasons
supplementary.
why Councillor Kelly, as the chair of economic development, sits on the board of the Chamber of Commerce now. So
yeah,
I that's a bit of an answer, but.
And could we also get a list of actual businesses that are going to be open all year round? And also on the parking that's coming to council for next month. I know some of those parking lots are open now, maybe only Hardy Lake is, I don't know, but that's what I drive by. Could we get a better idea of what is open right now and what we are going to have to maintain if we propose to go forward on this?
And again, to your answering a
Those
question.
would be my questions.
Thank you. It is, I do believe it's within the body of the, that we would bring forward to council, and I get, as a result of this discussion here, a more fulsome recommendation to council. So one would hope that the items you've just brought up would be contemplated. I'm sure Corey is capturing those comments, as he is others. And unless I'm wrong, Corey, and I'll give you an opportunity before we wrap this up. But I would go to Councillor Roberts now. Corey's been very patient. Councillor Roberts.
There we go. Sorry about that. And through you, Chair. First of all, a comment on interchanging members and meetings. I don't support that. I think we pick up the phone and 2 or 3 of us just talk on a conference call to solve this problem rather than going to meetings. That's my 2 cents on that. Let's just talk. As far as the winterization initiatives, I'm fully in support of this. COVID has given us an opportunity to open up all season access in Muskoka. But I think we've got to be cautious, and I'll get the CAO to maybe comment on this, but I'm against even plowing the parking lot in Huckleberry Rock. I'm against encouraging public to go up on the rock. It is a dangerous situation to climb up there. And you're adding motorized vehicles, of course, on a trail, but from the reports I'm receiving, it's also becoming a local skidoo park or snowmobile park. I think we got to understand we are changing the usage of a property and promoting it in the wintertime. And I'm concerned that we're opening ourselves up into liability when something happens. And so for those reasons, I think we should consider it for this year, but for next year, don't plow the parking lot. Leave it. If people want to use it, let them use it, but I don't think we should put our stamp of approval. I'm fully supportive of the golf course and a flat terrain like that for cross country. I think that'd be a great start. So that's my opinion, and just don't mix put people up in a treacherous area.
Good, thank you. Thank you. So, under advisement, we'll let Councillor Nishikawa, and then I see the mayor has a comment. Councillor Nishikawa?
Well, I wanted to comment first of all about, and we don't talk about this very much, but we should. Port Carling was built as a 3-season village. Even not many, I think it might have even only been 4 years ago, we allowed a building to be built for 3-season use. Yeah. Because that is still allowed. So that's why you're not going to get a whole lot of businesses wanting to stay open in Port Carling, because their buildings will not allow that to happen. The other thing I wanted to just mention about was in our discussions with, and I'm going to also add a few things about our discussions from the Muskoka Trails Council, is that we recognized that there were many private facilities that we felt that they could use additional advertising. And I'll say Johnson's Cranberry Marsh has been a phenomenal addition to Muskoka Lakes, in my opinion, especially for winter activities. And then I also have seen over the years different reports from various camp facilities to allow their cross-country trails to be used as well. So I would suggest that we could explore some other uses as well. Private facilities that are in fact wanting and opening their doors to the public, and we promote them as much as trying to create something that really isn't. And again, we don't have long trails. You know, some of our facilities are just not that long. The other two, the provincial park facilities, are different, but our own municipal facilities aren't that long. So I don't know that we can actually create too many opportunities there, but we can sure reach out to those businesses that are trying to encourage visitors and are taking the extra steps to make sure that happens.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Kelly.
All right, thank you very much. And through you, just a couple of responses to a couple of the earlier comments. To Councillor Hayes, I forget your question exactly, but it was along the lines of what are we doing to get stores to stay open? We can't force, we can't even with a straight face ask somebody to stay open unless we can offer them a bargain. And the bargain is there's going to be a demand here for your stuff that's going to justify the cost, the expense, and the hassle of keeping your store open. So what we can do is hopefully set a table, to use other people's language, whereby there's reasonable accommodation. There are attractions that are going to draw people up here, and you know, hopefully it's trails and it's the natural beauty and it's a natural vista, and it's, you know, a lot of vacation homes that are winterized. People want to come here. I think a lot of people want to come here, and frankly, I said yesterday on the council meeting, or Chamber of Commerce meeting, I think a lot of people are going to be back here sooner than they think, because I suspect we're going to see some sort of a lockdown in some of the large urban centers, if not even bigger than that, in the near future. And people are going to say, to hell with it, I'm going back to the cottage. So we need to make people feel welcome. We need to make people feel important. It's just like running any kind of business. We got to look after them. We got to serve them. And that sets the plate for a store to realize that if I do open and I hire a staffer and I pay for this exorbitant heat, and I have to invest, as I think Councilor Nishikawa suggested, in some insulation and storm windows, I'm going to be here to meet the demand. There will be a demand. There will be people here in a mood to spend money, to buy provisions, to you know, explore the outdoors, to need all the gear they need for winter. And that's why stores will stay open. So we need to make sure that we do what's within our control, which is you know, working with the chamber, working through the Economic Development Committee, making this place an attractive place for a business to set up. Make sure that there are attractions, natural four-season attractions, to get people to come up here with their wallets, with their credit cards, and hopefully spring it open and spend some money. That's why restaurants will stay open, because people are lined up to get in and eat breakfast. And the last issue for me, and you know, I mean, I certainly understand the kind of risk-averse sense that I get about opening Huckleberry Rock, but quite honestly, we're not forcing anybody to go up there. If we're making them aware of the fact that it's going to be slippery and it's going to be dicey for some people, but there's a lot of people who thrive on that, who want to go up and explore and lay claim to the fact that they climbed this thing in the worst of the weather. I think not plowing the snow is a passive-aggressive way of saying, you're not welcome here. If they're not welcome here, we should put a barricade across the parking lot and say, you're not welcome here. You know, no trespassing. As long as people are allowed to go up there, they ought to really have a way to get the cars off the road, to get their gear on safely and go up the hill. And I don't share, I understand the risk, trust me, but I also think people are entitled to make some decisions based on good information that allows them to take the odd risk, to drive 130 kilometers an hour in a 100 zone. People do those things every day. They make those decisions, and I don't think, I think we need to either decide that the risks are too great for anyone to assume and shut it down. But more correctly, I think we need to make sure that people are aware that there are some risks to this. Assume it at your own responsibility, but go have fun. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I call on the mayor and Councillor Edwards, I would just like to, I suppose, ask the question, what is the, let's use the word risk for just a moment. What is the risk to the township when I go to the rock and I slip and fall and break my leg? What is that risk? What inherent responsibilities, exposure does the township have? Does our corporation have?
Well, we'd have to find a new chair for this meeting.
That's really nice. That's really nice for you. Well, let's do that. I wonder if we could ask of Director Becking. I think it's what is our exposure? What is the exposure? People go up there and somebody falls, hurts themselves. I guess it's the same at Hardy Lake. They're in a provincial park and they slip and fall and break an arm, and they want to sue someone because the ice wasn't managed. What is the exposure piece to that? Is it just my personal decision to go and, you know, I have no recourse if I'm hurt there? Is that, or is that a really big question?
In response to your question, Mr. Chairman, anybody can sue you anytime for anything. While there are standards of care that apply to roadways, as it relates to trails, basically the understanding is that you use at your own risk. And, you know, if someone wants to put themselves in that position, then they take on the liability that's associated. That won't stop them from trying to sue us. In the end, they have to be able to prove gross negligence under the Occupiers Liability Act in order to gain traction and be successful. It would depend on the individual circumstances of any given case.
Okay, thank you for that insight. I'll call on the mayor. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. As probably the one individual that has snowmobiled up on top of that rock in the wintertime, countless times through the wintertime, and walked up there countless times. I'm just for fun going to share my computer screen right now. My picture was taken last winter of 15 people standing on the rock, nobody falling off, nobody sliding off. It is a popular destination for snowmobilers as well. Oh, I wasn't really sharing my screen. If you look at my profile picture, I think you can see it. I'm not sure.
Take over.
Can you see that? If you look at,
yep.
Like I'm on, I guess you could share my screen. Hang on, let me pull this picture up. Hang on. Got it. There you go.
I don't see the Sherpa guide.
If you can see that, you don't need a Sherpa guide. It is a, if you can see that now, great place to be. And there has never been a conflict that I've seen from a walker or a snowmobile. It's not a through trail. Snowmobilers will go to the top of the mountain just to look out over the lake, which is spectacular. If anything, there's probably a bigger downside. We can stop sharing. I don't know if I'm sharing whatever's happening, but there's probably a bigger downside when the cars are parked on the road, because we're blocking access to the road and snowmobiles are having to go around. The side trail goes there versus going straight across if you're going out to Lake Muskoka. Getting the cars off the road is probably a safer thing to do. And not to mention, realistically, snowmobiles really only go on that trail maybe through the month of February and half through the month of March. Once you start to lose snow and the trails are closed, they're not there, but there's still snow on the ground. The parking lot's clear. People can walk up there. Nobody's slipping, nobody's falling. And if you happen to slip off a piece of rock, you're landing in puffy snow. So it's a pretty safe time to walk. I'm going to stop.
Good, thank you. I'm going to call on Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. And that just a few at that point through the chair. First of all, the golf course, I see it's 2,500 for clearing it. You know, we can get a volunteer to run through with a skidoo, but we should be marking the greens so they're not damaged and that. And, you know, years ago, we used to break our own trail when we were cross-country skiing. It's more fun. Huckleberry Rock, it should be marked better. I've been saying that for years and that, but I'll talk to the Trails Committee. I actually had to go down and rescue people, a relative, and had friends down there. And that was on a Thanksgiving when it snowed a little bit. It's not well marked and they got lost. So yeah, the people in the area that know it, it's fine. If you have strangers up there, it is not the best. But as far as opening the parking lots, if that's what they want, that's fine. And that the street lighting, I'm okay with that, but I would check with the businesses that do decorate for Halloween, for Christmas and anything else like that. And one of the things that Orangeville used to have is they had businesses take it in that park, in a park, and they would do lighting in that, and they would have displays all through, and people could walk around and see them. It brought a lot of people into Orangeville, and then they go get a coffee or something like that. But and that's for something in the future. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Before I call on Councillor Mazan and perhaps the last comment from Councillor Roberts, I might just say that one of the neat byproducts of this whole discussion is just that we are drawing attention to the topic, the use of outdoor, the recreational piece, very important. And I think that as we all come together on these and provide those sensitivities, that it will serve to up the ante, if you will, and draw attention, which is really what we're here for. So Councillor Mazan, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, and through you. One of the things that when economic development teams started to discuss looking at our natural assets and understanding the different experiences, and I'll use that word, to the different audiences, that was something that we really took under consideration. And I would just urge the group to consider that as well as we make these decisions. We talked about plowing the sports park and ensuring that Hannah Park has a safe walking space, because that is a very well used, safe place to go. And, you know, I would argue that the Huckleberry Rock is the opposite of that, but there's a market out there. There are people who, and I think Councillor Kelly was touching on that, are looking more for something like that. So, you know, I applaud Corey's efforts and also trying to spread out these initiatives throughout the township. It may not be perfect, it certainly isn't, but there is a real effort put into a variety of experiences for across the township. So, you know, as we contemplate this more over the next month, I just would like that to be part of the lens as well. Different people looking for different things at different areas within the township, and having a variety is something that our customers, being the businesses, are also looking for. The one question I did have, and Corey, I think you might be putting up the spreadsheet, but I do remember us talking about the Muskoka Lakes, the museum area as an area that for walking, or I can't recall. I didn't see that in this report. Was that something that we just set aside, or had we considered it for something else?
If I may, your chair, I do have the inventory list ready if you'd like me to,
thank you.
to share.
Yeah, I wonder if we, before we do, I wonder if we would give Gord, he has been waiting again patiently. Yeah, if we could perhaps, and then we could finish with the inventory, if you would indulge me, Gord.
Yes, okay, thank you. I've just got to respond to that beautiful picture of a group of people up on a rock at Huckleberry, and I have been up there. If it's where I think it is, all that happened to do is someone would take about a 10-foot step back and they drop 20 feet in that particular area. So this is exactly what I'm talking about, and I encourage the CAO to contact their insurer to understand what our risk is to really know, because I guess there's a one lawyer in this council, but I don't think there's a lot, and particularly we don't have an insurance lawyer on this council. So that's my last point.
Okay, thank you. And, I think in the course of discussions, that certainly is a point that needs to be considered. Before I finish up, I'd like to call on Corey and I suppose Susan in that interplay in terms of the inventory list. Corey, I believe you have that now.
Yep, I can just share it here, Chair.
Good. And the idea of this is sort of the enormity of, we're blessed. When you see it on one piece of paper, it is a very considerable body of assets, if you will. So Councillor Mazan asks a great question about, say, that museum or the round, if you will, at the locks. Do we plow that in the winter and people can walk around in there? So that's the spirit of all of this. So I might let you, Corey, just for a moment, perhaps present this.
Sure, Chair. Yeah, and further to Councillor Mazan's comments, with the Grants and Economic Development Advisory Committee, the first step was this asset inventory that we created and was really kind of the base of where we started with selecting the initiatives we did. We did want to space them out throughout the municipality as much as we could. I know Councillor Mazan touched on James Bartleman Island. We did discuss that briefly as an opportunity as well, and I guess it definitely could be. The difference being there is that is a District of Muskoka property, and just would involve some further discussions with them on anything there. I know there was some questions early on that I wanted to touch on as well too, mostly regarding street lighting and the possibility there. Further to Chair Kelly's comments, a lot of the I guess inspiration is around kind of that beautification aspect of our downtowns, and that is just one piece of the puzzle for economic development and trying to extend our seasons and the year-round economy. But it's definitely just another piece of trying to create those conditions that would encourage local businesses to maybe look at their business plans and consider extending their seasons as well. In particular, as noted in the staff report, should committee desire, we would like to bring back a further report regarding the street lighting, if that's of interest. That would give us the ability to highlight some further examples possibly and gain a better understanding of what exact costs could look like there, and possibly a further discussion around that further as well. With anything else, Chair? With the screen, I can continue to share it, but I think it's just a good example of some of the work we've done with the committee and kind of where that base came from on how we selected a few of these initiatives for this year.
Excellent, thank you. I wonder if we could see if we could circulate that to all of council, just as a matter of record for their own files. I mean, good reference material at some later time. The only thing I would ask, and again, this is more procedural than anything, I do have a resolution to read here. And I'm wondering if, and this is a question I suppose to the clerk, concurrent to, if I read the resolution, which takes this concept to council for September, could we ask at the same time? It seems to me that if Parks and Trails and Economic Development could have a joint meeting between now and council, perhaps, again, you use, open conversation, the sharing of ideas and concepts. When we, to get this to council next month, I wonder if there's an appetite for that. I mean, would it be a joint meeting? It just seems that there are members of both committees who have thoughts and observations to share, and it would be likely relevant to have that reflected in this final report to council on the 16th, that then we vote on that. So I don't know, is there an appetite for that? Sorry? So
if I can make a recommendation.
Sorry, go ahead.
We could pass this motion today. When it comes to council, these can be separated into individual resolutions specifically and action items, which will make it easier for us to approve or deny each individual one when it comes to council. And I just make that recommendation or advice to the clerk at this particular point. We'll already anticipate pulling each item out, and then anybody can chime in at that point.
Comment? There's a number of items, quite a number of items. Huckleberry Rock, but there could also be some additional locations that, for example, you know, for Carling at the locks. Sorry.
If I may, again, I think the item in discussion we have right now is on the table, the 4 items. I would do that. You want to talk about Port Carling at the locks? You want to talk about liability, shoveling a concrete pathway with ice beside icy cold waters? Someone's going swimming off that guaranteed, or we're going to have to sand and salt that, which is going in the lake. And we also have snowmobiles that go across James Bartleman Park. So we're really asking for the issue there. To me, and I'm going to ask that we call this question to move this forward, because I think we all have another meeting in about an hour and wouldn't mind a bite to eat. So these can all be debated further at council, but let's try and move it off the committee agenda.
Well, I would concur, short of wanting to give this its due. So, you know, with that, I'll certainly look to everyone. I do believe we have a consensus at the very least to move this forward. Yes, I'm seeing a nodding of heads. So I would read this resolution moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be resolved that the General Finance Committee recommended Township Council to approve the winter maintenance activities for the 2020-2021 winter season as outlined in the report entitled Township Winter Initiatives and dated September 16th, 2020. All those in favor? Show of hands. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so moving on from that, and again, thank you, Corey, for that report. Item 9, unfinished business. I have nothing to report. I have no documentation on anything. Does anyone have unfinished business? I see Councillor Hayes has her hand up.
I'd just like to give an update on a decision that council made about the parking at Walker's Point Marina. I have had several telephone calls from residents and cottagers saying how wonderful it is to drive down the road and not have the congestion. They feel much safer, and they were amazed at how quickly it could be done. And they have nothing but good things to pass along to everybody, including the roads department. So thank you from them. And I just thought I would let you know.
Good, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, moving along. I don't see any hands on anything else relating to unfinished business. So item 10, new business. We have a motion moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by myself. Councillor, well, I guess in terms of creation of a summer student position in 2021, a road cruiser patrol. I do have the motion in front of me. I don't know if it needs any preamble. Councillor Kelly.
I mean, I'm happy to speak to it if it needs some clarification. We talk a lot about stuff being left by the roadside, abandoned here, abandoned there. And, you know, frankly, I've been to many other similar, I will say, tourist-oriented, recreationally oriented places where, you know, part of the service that we offer visitors and residents alike is somebody who just basically, instead of trying to figure out who caused the problem, just get it fixed. We shouldn't back off on any kind of enforcement. We should maybe reinforce and double down on, you know, no littering laws or that kind of stuff. But to the extent that it's out there, let's get it off the road. Let's get it out of the line of sight. Let's clean it up and maybe do it in a way that's, it's like, you know, it's like the old-fashioned notion of a gas station. You used to pull in and they were well attended, well dressed. They cleaned your windshield. They checked your oil. Well, let's offer a service. Let's clean the place up a little bit. It's sad to me to see it there. It's even sadder that we don't know how to stop it. But while we're trying to figure that out, let's get it gone. And that's really what the goal is.
Thank you. Well said. Councillor Hayes?
I think it's a really good idea however, without knowing what this is going to cost or how it's going to be executed, or I really don't think that I would vote on it today. I would put it in for a budget item when we have better clarity on exactly how it's going to be executed. But I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on this today.
Good, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let me read the motion to your point. Whereas the Township of Muskoka Lakes is known for its pristine natural beauty, and whereas the second home services and tourism are important sectors of the local economy, and whereas the increase in the accumulation of debris and litter adjacent to township roads during the summer months detracts from the desirability of this township as a destination of choice for our visitors, now therefore be it resolved that the General Finance Committee recommend to Township Council that staff be directed to include for Council's consideration requisite funds in the draft 2021 operating budget to establish a Township Clean Cruiser pilot project program, the purpose of which would be to clearly remove incidental waste and or errant refuse on township roadside areas during the 2021 summer months. And I might indicate township and district roads. I mean, because we are talking, there is a lot of refuse, and just to Councillor Kelly's point, just to clean the place up, and no one is doing it right now. There is no protocol in place. Our staff isn't doing it. It's not within their purview. It's just not being done. And there's construction garbage. There's just a lot of things on the roadside that I think even if the vehicle were to be identified, perhaps a bit of a marketing program, clean it up. We're cleaning it up. Let's all clean it up. Let's be sensitive to the environment. It's just a great message. To your point, Councillor Hayes, sure. What's it going to cost? And we'll know that. We'll know that through due process. So this is to get it on the dance floor, get it as an idea, as a concept into our 2021 budget deliberations. So, yeah, so I do have there's a comment here from Councillor Roberts, if I might.
Just very quickly, I do support, we need a business case or what this would be due, because I think you'd probably have to hire, Mr. Becking will be able to answer that, but I think you would have to hire more than one, and he would know the labor laws on that, and we'd have to provide them a vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I have been involved for 2 or 3 years on Earth Day, cleaning up along the roadside, the garbage on 118. And it's 4 or 5 of us who spend 4 or 5 hours to get 8 bags of garbage on a small strip of highway. So this is no small task.
Good,
so
thank you.
I look forward to the report.
Thank you. And so what I would read as moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. I've read the motion. All those in favor? Okay, those opposed? Councillor Bridgman? I don't see it. Councillor Bridgman, do you have a question?
Sorry, I do. Sorry, I'm not opposed to this. I'm not quite sure that putting it on the floor was what I really wanted to see. I agree with Councillor Roberts and Councillor Hayes. I'd just like a little more detail in this before we launched into it. So if this is an approval to go to council so that we can get a more in-depth thing, I'm all for it. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, and that's exactly what it is. It says, and I can read it again. It said, the staff should be directed to include for council's consideration requisite funds in the draft 2021 operating budget to establish a pilot project, if you will, Township Clean Cruiser Pilot Project Program. So the purpose of which would be to clear and remove incidental waste. So this would simply get it to where we will be asking those types of questions.
Well, then can I vote for it at this point? No, it's going to carry anyway, Councillor Zavitz, so don't worry about it.
It's carried. It's carried.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that comment. Now, CAO, do you have a? So I'll ask our CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just so it's abundantly clear to council, what the resolution will go to council next month. And what this will do is ensure that as we go through the 2021 budget process, there is the business case for this proposal that Councillor Roberts was sort of speaking to. And at that point, council can make a decision as to whether or not the program proceeds or isn't. There's the resources stay in the budget. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, so that did carry. Thank you very much. I will look to item 10B, which is the District Municipality of Muskoka updates. We have 4 of them. It is 10 after 12. I don't suppose we can carry that over to council. Looking at the clerk.
I can be very brief, Councillor.
Okay. Okay, fine. So I'll ask the mayor for his comment on public works.
Quickly, and again, I try to strictly talk about only things that are going to really pay attention or be of an issue for us here in Muskoka Lakes. And the only thing that was coming specifically to us was that of the Port Sandfield Bridge rehabilitation. There was supposed to be a planned 2-week closure. We've been able to get staff to reconsider that. And we're looking that we should be able to just deal with night closures that will start at 9 p.m. till 5:30 a.m. On the weekends, it'll be 11 p.m. until 5:30 a.m. There will be no closures over Thanksgiving. We're still working with the contractor. The length of night closures might be extended, and there's still a possibility that there may be a 24-hour or overnight closures, but that probably wouldn't occur till the springtime. It really depends when we get into the road work, what needs to be done and doesn't need to be done. But anyway, that's the heading. I approved a press release yesterday that should be going out shortly, and we can share with everybody. But it's actually will be discussed at our district council this week. And then the one thing, just so that everybody does understand, we're actually kind of dovetails into the last item, and that's talking about specifically cleaning up on our roadsides. We have included some bylaw enforcement officers, by the way, for our solid waste and transportation budget at the district. And that's in contemplation of our 2021 budget. And that's my report.
Thank you. I have two blue hands up here, I suppose, for your presentation. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, just a quick question for his worship. Somebody somewhere is thinking about the need to put emergency response assets on both sides of the bridge to the extent access is closed. I think fire is covered with the Manette station, but I'm thinking ambulance, and I don't even know what influence we have over police. But will that be something that somebody takes care of?
It's all contemplated as soon as a road, so it's about an 80-kilometer detour. That will be contemplated. And by the way, pedestrian traffic is still accessible as well.
Thank you. Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you, a question for the mayor. Has there been any update as to solid waste and specifically the bin waste sites? Just what's now that we've gone through the summer, we've gone through some of the pilots, and what is our expectation now?
So from a solid waste perspective, let me just give you an update. We've had some issues, obviously, with our contractor throughout the summer, lots of missed collection days. We've negotiated with Waste Connections Canada an amendment to the contract to get us through this year. There is lots of information that has been subject to closed session at the district on this. From a bin site perspective, we have not landed that airplane yet, so to speak. And I got a letter from Minister Urick 2 days ago at a request for myself that flagged a few issues, if you will. And I need to go back, just again, more matters of closed session. But myself and my fellow mayors are trying to organize a bit of a meeting with our Commissioner of Public Works and then the ministry to look at some go forward solutions. So No further right now, but it'll be coming in the next 3 months as to where we need to go for 2021. That's all I can advise.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll call on Councillor Frank Jaglowitz for his report.
Thank you. The meeting's running late, so I'm actually going to defer my report till the next meeting. But I would like to just chime in on the Port Sandfield Bridge closure. I was asked to follow on the paramedic issue by some people that are concerned. I have 2 calls into Commissioner Bert, who has so far not replied. So I assume it's all in the mix somewhere, but people are concerned about that, and I'm sure there'll be some news shortly. But I will report fuller next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I had, and I will continue to do this, forward our Health Services Committee meetings minute to councillors with the request that you actually send me some questions or concerns that you may have. Certainly it is a lot of money is being contemplated right now. Some changes have happened with the province concerning the funding for our newer long-term care home, and that hasn't been solidified as yet, but there are some changes coming there. I think we're going to get further assistance, which is good. But I just mostly want to ask others to, if I'm sending you our agendas and things, if you would please help me with any questions and things that I can bring forward, because it shouldn't be just my opinion. It should be this council's opinion on what I, as a district council, bring forward. I will say that of late, Dr. Gardner is requesting that people limit their social distancing, not limited actually. So their groupings, where now, they moved it up to 10, they're really suggesting that you stick to within your own household. Things are getting out of control, and there's a concern that much of the province will be shut down again, and what will that look like? Again, I mostly want to comment again that one of our discussions was a goal to recognize, so we have essentially shut off our seniors from social programs for more than 6 months this year, which is a really, really big concern. And I think that we should be looking at, and with the help of the district, to recognize and build a more social and emotional programming that is available for our senior citizens, because at this point now, there's nothing, and we do owe them that, in my opinion.
Good, thank you. And I would imagine we'll have more discussion on that in this afternoon session. Thank you, Councillor Nishikawa. So I would call on Councillor Edwards, for his commentary.
Thank you very much. Since it's 12:15, I'm going to be very, very brief. There was a correspondence from Gordon Roberts, president of the 3 Mile Lake Association, asked for a causation study, which will be done. There was 20 units for Muskoka affordable housing, which is 1.5 million, 19 in Gravenhurst, 1 in Bracebridge. There was 9 projects for community enhancement, again, none in Muskoka Lakes. And what they've done is they've got $25,000, and they're moving that into the special service enhancement for, and that, so if anybody needs a ride or something like that, there's money. There was 10,000 in that. They've moved 25,000 over, so 35, and they're eligible for 2,000 if they in that they can prove the need. There's a shared service agreement with the Ontario government for the Dorset Environmental Sciences. And they'll do lake monitoring, lab services, data management, and tech guidance advice. And I think since 2001 up until now, we've got about $935,000 from the province, and they will be kicking in. And that will go from 2020 to 2025. And childcare as of September 1st are all open, although some may not be opening and that with the restrictions, but they have opened them. And that's my report. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, that's the district reports section. So C, community events update. I don't imagine we need to spend a lot of time on this. Is there there's a hand up, Councillor Hayes?
Yes, September 23rd at 1 p.m. The Habitat for Humanity and the Adopt a Home Committee of the Muskoka Lakes Township build for the duplexes for attainable housing. Due to COVID, it's not a public unveiling. Invitations were issued. Those people that have invitations could you RSVP so that we know what the numbers are? Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Edwards, Councillor Roberts. So Councillor Edwards first, please.
Okay, thank you. This Sunday, of course, is the 40th annual Cherry Fox Run. There's nothing organized, but we are asking people to run. We have a website, and Windermere has a website if you'd like to donate it. Some people will be walking it, but it's not organized, but we definitely will be walking it.
If they email us, we can send them.
And you can, if anybody needs any information, we can email it to you. Thank you.
And
Good,
thanks,
thank
Linda.
Thanks. You had help there. Councillor Roberts.
Very quickly, I'd like to report the successful construction on township property of a gazebo that was paid fully by the community, Milford Bay Community Center. And it was constructed by local contractors that were all insured with WSIB and et cetera. So you have a chance, drop by and take a look at this marvelous post and beam gazebo that's going to be part of the our memory garden.
Good, thank you. Good news. Excellent. There is no closed session, so I'm going to move to adjourn this meeting. Moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 12:20. At 12:20 p.m. and the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held on October 14th, 2020 at 9 a.m. All those in favor? Good. Thank you very much. Carried. We'll see you all soon.